Welcome to Perceptions Today. It happens to be the UK date, 16th of May, 2023, Twitter Space Chat 52, with Brandi Van discussing the consciousness recognizing psychic abilities. She is a medium and helps people actually discover their abilities and take them to further locations, which we'll be discussing later. Remember, this is being streamed to YouTube and recorded for Perceptions Today podcast. Refrain from actually divulging your private information. As you know, Perceptions Today is all about contemplating consciousness topics in all different areas. I'm your host, Paul. We have two co-hosts here live from 4 a.m. in Australia. Melissa from CentredAwareness. Say hello, Melissa.
Good morning, everybody.
And also someone who's in the same time zone as I am is Ian D.W. Hawkins. You may say hello.
Hi, everyone. Hope you're well.
And yes, we know that things have been going strange on our last particular events because technical issues. So make sure that you follow our account so that we can always send out the links again if anything does go wrong. As you know, our aim is to actually reach people with questions, those with experiences, and also those who are researching and looking into consciousness-related things. We're also looking for this information because we want to see it actually help us with our understanding of what we've gone through within our own lives at the same time. We have other events that are actually being planned as well, and to be kept up to date with those, you can go to perceptionstoday.com. Then you can also sign up to either the mailing list or go to the social media different links where we also post when we do have events. There is actually a web page which has an events page on there. Some of the events that are coming up, 25th of May, we have Diane Dreyer, who is a PhD. We'll be talking about Taoism and also consciousness. Then on the 11th of July, we have Souls and Consciousness with Joshua Cutchin. That will actually be trying out the platform of callin.com, which if you haven't been onto that before, that allows you to go in through via either the app or through the browser. And also we can have video there as well, which will be really quite a good testing of this new platform. The conversation will all be about Brandi discussing her abilities and acceptance of how it all started off within her life and how she's now taking it through to actually helping others, which, again, most people don't realize that they've actually got these kind of abilities. So when we're going through this conversation, we will also find that we will have the opportunity to raise hands. We'll take your hand as who's going next for a question, and we can go through this. And if you look into the top of the nest, we have a few ways of actually dealing with conversations here. Our first one is to actually just be nice to each other and keep on topic and use family-friendly language. And then you will find in there that we also have the opportunity that if you do come up and want to ask a question or just provide information, we like to keep it under 3 minutes so that we can go through as many people as possible. You can also do a brief overview of yourself in 30 seconds if you want, and we can go around this. We also have different ways of actually using the emoticons, which, again, most of the time, if you're away from the mic when you have the mic, we like to make sure you have that. They're fully described in there, and the ones that we normally use is that if you can't get to the mic again, you obviously use a thumbs down. That makes sense. And again, if you agree with things, you can use the fist bump, or you can actually use the 100%. Yeah, that's still there, isn't it? The 100%. Yes, and you can also use the waving, and you can use other emoticons as you go along. So without further ado, I would like to introduce Brandi to you.
Hey, everyone. I'm so glad to be here. Thanks, everyone, for jumping in today and listening to our call.
So what I would like you to do, if you don't mind, is kind of go over the time period of when you started to realize you were actually picking up information and how it made you feel, because that will probably resonate a lot with people.
Sure. So I was at a very young age. I was only about 10, 12 years old, and I was dabbling with the Ouija board. I had always had this pull toward paranormal events. And so things were happening in my house, like electronics were going off and on, like the garage would go up, Eileen's that would fall over, and it made no sense. Like there was no wind coming through. So there were just like little things that got me more interested. I started dabbling with the Ouija board. Then, I was in high school, it dropped off. But then at age 7, I was actually walking through the woods with my friends. We were going to get a pizza, and all of a sudden we heard this growling. And at the time, I thought maybe an animal. But when I was running away from it, this animal didn't follow us. And I remember seeing it as black and white, kind of like the Phantom of the Opera looking. And it had pushed me. And I remember thinking, like, oh my gosh, this must be a human here to scare me. Like, what is it doing? So I run back to my house, call the cops. The cops go back. There was nothing back there. And it wasn't until like 20 years later, I think, that I was like, oh my gosh, that was a spirit. That was not a human. That was not an animal. So that was my real first experience, but I didn't even realize I was having that experience. And then
can I ask you quickly on this, because you've piqued my curiosity on several areas, and I'm sure with others as well. When you were talking about coins falling over, can you just describe what you mean by that?
Sure. So, like, I would have in a paper bag, like, sitting on my dresser, like, near my TV. And all of a sudden, I'd be bored with my friends, and then the coins would just fall over. So they would literally fall from the dresser and onto the floor. So you'd see the paper bag fall, you'd hear all the coins falling, and there literally made no sense of why these would fall. And also, like I was saying too, like, I'd be Ouija board, all of a sudden our garage door would start going up and down while I was with the Ouija board. So it was just like, these were happening while I was
Wow. So with that, you had, because obviously it's nice to rule out these kind of things, you must have been in an area which was very stable. You didn't have any kind of earthquake tremors or anything that was building material like diggers or anything going around to cause the vibrations to make things bounce down and drop off of counters.
Absolutely not. And where we lived was actually on an burial ground. So all the streets were named all the different Indian names. So at that time, I actually found out that my mom, everyone has psychic abilities. I just didn't realize it. So she was thinking that perhaps I was doing, and I was conjuring up these, the Indians that were underneath us. I don't know if that's the political correct term to say now, but that's what
we'll go for native. Indigenous native, I think, is probably one of the easiest ways of doing things. Again, if you've never seen the 1980s poltergeist films, anyone, it's very similar, it sounds, for what was going on at that point. But with that, with your, obviously, relatives, were they actually talking about their abilities, or had they kind of decided not to discuss them in front of other people or family?
They definitely did not discuss. The only reason they were even it then was because I was playing with the Ouija board. But now that I look back at it, that she had abilities, and she knows I'm like dabbling into something dark, because now I'm having these experiences of poltergeists were happening. At that point, could have guided me toward, maybe don't do these things, know what you're before you just open something up. So it wasn't actually until just a few years ago that my family started telling me, where just, even though I don't consider myself a witch, but yeah, and then everyone started talking about this. So my mom's like a telepath, my uncle angelic healer. So we have all these abilities, and it all started with our ancestors. And nobody ever said anything until a few years ago when I really started to get into this.
Wow. So this will make sense to you. Melissa is a sensitive, and she can hear voices as well. So we'll bring her in a minute. But what you're saying, and again, as we said with many times on these kind of events that we've had, that language just doesn't really fit the right pattern, and we might be using the wrong terms for describing things, that obviously we can pick up on these things. So Melissa, you would have understanding of this.
Yeah, we were actually taught not to play with Ouija boards, because they can bring up, because you don't know what you're playing with when you're playing with a Ouija board. So yeah, it's just interesting. So I've also had this ability from when I was young, and never really had any dark experiences where I was afraid. I've had things move, I've seen a spirit, because I used to run meditation groups, and one of my best friends, he had passed away, and in that meditation group, he popped up as a spirit. I think I've shared this story with the community before. I could see something like a bit of smoke, and it went from one window, but it was like it was flying kind of, so it wasn't smoke sitting off the land kind of a thing. And it went from one window, and then I saw it go through another window. Like, oh, that's a spirit. But I always felt peaceful, like never felt afraid, like I was attracting something dark. And I asked it in through my mind, is there a message that you want me to pass on to someone? And it wasn't until, and I didn't hear anything at that point, but it wasn't until after we did the meditation that I saw him standing next to one of my students. So that was really interesting for me. I couldn't show that to him. I couldn't be, because everyone was there for different types of meditations. Like, not everyone was into this, like the super spiritual side of it. It was more like some people were there for the like, you know, the Buddhist side of it. Some people were there for learning how to be peaceful and keeping the mind still. So I couldn't really get into the, I don't want to call it the woo-woo side, but that's actually my favorite side of spirituality, the experiences of it. But yeah, I actually saw him. There was another time when I was really young. This is probably when I really first discovered that I had the ability to see or to hear. I was dancing in the living room by myself, and I felt someone behind me. And as soon as I turned around, I saw someone run, and he was wearing all white. And then when I went looking for him, and so that was an experience I had when I was really young. But I'm also helping people as well through guidance. So if they come to me, I'll do a reading for them. Sometimes it'll come up in my healing as well. When I'm doing a healing for them, I'll hear something like a form of guidance to help my client, or I'll see. Yeah, so for me, I think everybody has this ability. It's just how sensitive you are to it. And the more you meditate, you become more sensitive to it as well. I'm speaking purely off my experience. And I honestly think that meditation is key. I was told never to ever touch the Ouija board, because you can attract entities that you're not familiar with. Whereas like with myself, I tend to, when I'm working with my clients, I'm either bringing in my guides or their guides, and that's it. Because I don't want freaky things happening to me or to my clients or in my but yeah, and I always, when I'm dealing with spiritual activities, I'm always protecting myself and my client. I heard my cousin, she was playing with a Ouija board once as well, and she was saying that I think there was a glass that broke. It was just sitting there, and it just exploded, and they all got scared. So I think that's what kind of freaked me out too with the Ouija board. But then I've seen things on Gaia where the host, he's talking about, oh, you never play with a Ouija board, you've been told this and that. But then the person who brings the Ouija board in said, no, I've never actually had bad experiences. I've only had good experiences. And then they'll explain that. And that's on Gaia. But yeah, it's just interesting to hear, different sides of the stories with Ouija boards and things like that. My question would probably be, with the Ouija board, have you ever had any like really spooky, well, I guess you said like coins have fallen off and things like that, but did they ever come to you in your dreams and things like that?
No, I never had anything like that. Actually, after this, I stopped Ouija board and I never used it again. So that was I had, and that also stopped using it. And then ever since then, I've only had good experiences. So that was my only like bad experience, and everything since then has been very spiritual and light. So yeah, that was my biggest thing and my last, and I never used it again.
So I can see Ian's got a question. Just so then, would you say with the Ouija, it kind of, do you think it drew in entities that were of a lower vibration, so to speak?
Absolutely. I think because I didn't know what I was doing, I didn't know how to meditate at that point, so young, and I was just playing around with it, asking it things, not even truly believing in it. I think it absolutely opened something where negative entities were, able to come through. But I also people that do use it, and since they know what they're doing and they put their protections up first, and it's just like a different way to communicate. So you can use the Ouija board as long as you're doing it correctly and using it in a way that's not going to just dabble in possibly, these negative entities. So I do see it as a way to communicate, but don't do it unless that makes sense.
Oh, that makes perfect sense, because it's like giving a car to a 3-year-old. That's a weapon by that point. But if you've actually taught somebody to learn what the rules of the actual car are and what the signposts mean when you're driving and what other people are, then you can obviously make more sense of everything, which I think is obviously the way it could be done. Ian,
Sorry, I didn't want to interrupt the conversation you guys were having, Melissa, Brandi. If you know what you're doing and you're really well grounded, it's a completely different scenario. But I wanted to say that it's one of those ritualistic mechanisms that you can do that will literally open doorways that you have no idea about what you're doing. Like you're opening and not closing things by action and inaction using this board. And if, like Brandi said, you have everything together and you're grounded, it's probably never going to be a problem. But messing about with stuff like this is sometimes it can go horribly wrong. And I just want to give an example of that. So I've never ever touched it, and I certainly wouldn't. But my friends did this, and they made a homemade Ouija board, and they had screams coming out of the Bible that was next to them, and because the immediate effect of whatever they did, be it something they triggered, like a poltergeist, but it was from them, or something they brought into the environment that was completely not theirs, not them. The Bible was screaming, and they had issues in the house that they did that for a good 6 months afterwards, and there is absolutely no way I would ever dabble with something like that. I mean, dude, that was enough. But it's very interesting, isn't it, what you're doing? But I don't have the smarts or the testicular fortitude to mess about with it in any way. But the fact that you guys do it and have no issues pop up like that is really crazy to me.
I mean, Ian, you're doing that from the truth point of view, because we know that all the information that you're bringing is not to pull the wool over anybody's eyes, and those are strange events that really do have happened to your friends, which again is not sensationalism in that point. So that's quite amazing in what goes on there. When I'm going to bring, sorry, Ian.
No, that's fine. Myron, I think he's got his hand up.
I was just wanted a quick question to Brandi once Myron's asked his question, going back to the telepathy angle, and then we'll move forward on that one. So, Myron?
Yeah, I wanted to make the point about what's the name of that science group that created an entity on a Ouija board that wasn't alive, never. It was
the skull experiment with Philip.
Yeah, right.
The tulpa,
right.
yeah.
Do you know about that, Brandi?
No, I've never heard of that.
Okay, what they did was they decided to create a person and give it a history of certain kinds of aspects, and then give it a name. This is not a real person. This is just something they made up. And then they contacted it through the Ouija board. And so they're contacting something that never existed, that they made up. And these were, I think, scientists that did this experiment. And it was kind of a really fascinating insight into the power of the unconscious mind. I think that these guys got together. They unified their consciousness by creating an entity that they had a name for, and they even created its history. So from birth to death, they had a whole chronological life and death cycle, and then they conjured it up. Now, this thing never existed. So either they got a different entity that they thought was this guy, or we have the power to create certain kinds of realities and beings in those realities, whether we like it or not. In other words, our own power of concentration could produce an entity that would emulate, in their case, this fake one. And they don't discuss it that way. I mean, they say that it's all just something they made up and all that kind of stuff. But the fact is that when you make something up, you actually are creating something. Even though the name is that this person never lived, this person never existed, but that doesn't mean that somebody couldn't bilocate right into that experiment and then become part of that experiment, and then then they had to deal with it. There was no negative events that I remember reading about. But if my parents ever caught me with a Ouija board, I don't think I would have survived childhood. So they were born again Christians, and that, as far as they were concerned, was a straight line to the devil. And so I had a Ouija board that I made, kind of like people do. I mean, it's an easy thing to make. It's not, and I hid it from everybody, but I made one, and it was pretty simple. It had letters and a yes and no, and it didn't have a lot of really cool signs. But I don't think it's necessarily the Ouija board that does it. I think that it's more likely the power of connection with the unconscious mind and the collective unconscious. And I think it connects you to parts of your own intuition. Jung believed that that the mind that the intuitive part of the mind was one of the weaker parts of our maturation. And if you use intuitive insight, you can create all kinds of entities, and even if you don't intend it. For instance, I'll give you an example. I was sitting in my meditation, and I was thinking about an event that I wanted to make happen. So I was meditating on this event. Now, the event had never occurred, so I was trying to make an event happen. So I was meditating, and hours go by, and but if you stay focused on it, things start happening. They just start happening. And in my case, like you, I had some electrical problems. I play some chant music sometimes, and that turned off. And then the entity, or whatever it was, appeared in a form of, like some people had said, like kind of like smoke, but not. You could see through it, but you could see it had a form. And it didn't speak, and I didn't ask it any question. And I have a spirit guide named Charon, who's been with me since I was a child. And Charon just kicked this thing out. I mean, Charon just pushed it right out of the room. And Charon told me, destroy the board that I made, and to never do this again. And when Charon tells me to do something, I do it. And so I did that. And I'm not sure if using the Ouija board is necessarily a negative. I think that there's some kind of unconscious connection with the darker side of our conscious through certain rituals. And the Ouija board is just one of many. You can use rocks, you can use candles, you can use bells. There's the famous, open the book, light the candle, ring the bell, which is a witch's kind of way of getting entities to appear. And I don't think any of those things have anything to do with the entities appearing. I think the power of the unconscious mind has everything with them. And I think if you open your mind, you can open your mind into their realm and allow them to come into your unconscious. And once they get in, getting them out can be difficult, but it can also be very positive. So anyway, that's my rant for that one. But as far as the Ouija board is concerned, yeah, I never used it again. But when I look back on it now, I'm not so sure that the Ouija board had anything to do with it. Just like those scientists that created an entity that never existed.
Talking about that, I've put that into the nest, and also I'm going to give the links to you as well, Brandi, about the Philip experiment in there, so that will work well.
Yes, absolutely fascinating. You should read it, Brandi, because it really isn't a fascinating thing. And I think they misunderstood the result. That's just my opinion. I don't think they would care about my opinion. But anyway, I think that if you're if you're playing around with the powers of your mind and you have no experience with it, you're just doing it, starting it. It can be dangerous, just like if you do psychedelic experiment and stuff. And since Westerners and have a difficulty with opening the doors of perception, I think that once you can open the doors of perception, you don't need any objects to do that. You just need the power of your own unconscious that opens the doors. It's just, for me, I'm only talking for myself here. For me, all I have to do is kind of say good morning, and they come. And they come. I don't expect any particular kind or anything. I just, whatever comes.
I've got a few questions that want to be asked at this point. And also there's some comments that have been put into the actual tweet threads, which I think will also apply well for Brandi, because she's going to be explaining, as we know, more about this. I'm just going to find from Ian where his question comes in so we don't get too far away from the topic area.
No, it's absolutely fine. Myron answered what I was going to ask anyway. So yeah, if you want to hit Terry up. No, I'm good.
So just after Terry, I just want to check with Brandi and tell her what I'm seeing in the actual links here. Are you there?
Yes.
Excellent. So we have Debbie Meyer, who is in here, and hopefully she will have the opportunity to pick up and speak. And she's got many talents to her. She's a death doula, shaman, and she also goes through other kind of sensitivities. So there's a lot of people in here with similar kind of ways of picking up information, but obviously it's all used different languages. So she was putting in the actual tweet threads that in the West, two tulpas were first wrote about in Time Life in America. And again, there's a lot of information you can pick up on that in the same way with this. And with going quickly back on the telepathy point for your mother, you said, yeah?
Mm-hmm.
Was the telepathy one direction, or was it both directions? And could you actually hear could she hear distinct voices, or did the other person hear the voice in their own head?
Sure. So she was a receiver, so she was able to receive messages, not so much give the messages out.
So did she feel that like an empathy kind of receiving, or pictorial, or sound in her own head? Do you know?
Yeah, so she was mostly clairaudient, so she would actually hear it in her mind. And then she was also claircognizant, so more like clear knowing of it.
Oh, that's good, because that kind of crosses over with like Melissa's capabilities as well, which if she wants to speak about that after I've gone to Terry. So are you happy for us to go to Terry next, yeah?
Yeah, sure.
Brandi? Mm-hmm. Good. Terry?
Hi. The story about the scientist creating the tulpa, lots of enlightened teachers talk about how even the smallest thought that you have is creating a reality on some level, somewhere. So, and that in turn creates karma, so that it's very important to, have no thoughts if possible, and to watch your thoughts and where they go. So it's not surprising that if these scientists sit around a board or whatever and try to, consciously create something, that they would create something, a whole group of people doing that, of course. So I think that's pretty plausible.
There are cases. Oh, sorry. I thought you'd finished speaking at that point. Just very quickly, there was a case where one woman internalized her, not anger, but emotional distress into the form of a wolf. And when she was asleep, at one point, other people saw this wolf in an area where there were no wolves in that particular bit. And she had to kind of rein it back. But I can't remember the full story on that. But when she did, then she had to kind of dissolve it in a manner with her own feelings.
Right. That makes sense. I mean, I'll buy it. Personal experience on weird stuff like this. My brother had a girlfriend for a brief amount of time who was kind of a freaky person, and emotionally unstable, but also extremely psychic, extremely mediumistic. And at one point we met up in an empty classroom, and she just grabbed this like stool that was there. It was an art classroom, and it was a 3-legged stool. And we did this medium session or whatever, where the stool was just like moving of itself. Our fingers were lightly touching the top of it, and it was answering questions and etc. And after that, I was like, okay, anything is possible, because there was no strings. This was a spontaneous decision to do this in this classroom where we just happened to be picking up some artwork that my brother had made. And I was just like, okay, there was no mirrors, nothing was there. So that is real. And as to the telepathy, my husband, I guess he's a receiver, because I'm often, maybe I'll be asking myself a question or something, and he will like turn to me and talk to me as if I had out loud said it to him, and he'll like answer the question, and I'll be like, I didn't say anything. Why did you just say that? Because I just thought it. You're freaking me out. And he'll do that every once in a while. It's disturbing, to say the least.
So, Brandi, can you follow in through to obviously the way that you then started to flex the internal muscle of yourself to bring those abilities into a better way of utilization for other people?
Yeah, absolutely. So a few later, after I had that experience and put the Ouija board away, my next experience was so strong and so powerful. We were all around my grandma, just taking her last breath. There were real family members there. We were all holding hands, crying as she took her last breath. And we're all looking down at her, but I had this feeling in my stomach, this feeling so strong to look above the. And when I looked above the bed, describe it in human terms, was that it was the most brilliant, like powerful colors I've ever seen. So with my physical eye, I was all these bright purples and blues and silvers. And then with my mind's eye, I was specks of light. And with my claircognizant ability, which I know now, clear knowing of her ancient star of colors. So that was, I'm not religious at all, but it was so spiritual and powerful. I had to leave, and it took me like years before I told any of my cousins what I had experienced. But in that moment, I knew that my grandma wanted me to see her, going to this place of peace, and that she was okay. And that's what really started my journey. I was like, okay, clearly I have something here. Not everyone saw this, so real. And that's what got me on my journey. So, there's no class that go, like nobody to talk to. It's very taboo. People don't really talk about it. So I decided to get a mentor, but that processed me years to even find the mentor. So I didn't find someone at first. I was reading
Got a quick question for you, because I've also seen Melissa had a hand up when I had the icons scrolled up, so she wasn't there at the time. But could you describe how the colors, you could see them with your physical eyes?
Yeah, so how if you look at even like a very strong light bulb, and even though the light bulb might be light, but you see like the purple and the blues and the different colors in the light bulb? It was like that.
So they weren't sharp shapes, they were curves, etc., not kaleidoscopic. I was just trying to figure out what kind of way to best describe that imagery you were seeing.
Yeah, kaleidoscopic is a great way, because they did have points, so it was like they were all coming together to star. But it's so bright, as if you're looking at the sun with no sunglasses on and you're squinting. I mean, that's how bright this was. But yeah, it was a cool eye that I see that. And then within it, I saw the specks of light, which now I know that there was going into it.
This is interesting because of, one, we got lots of people who have experiences with light. And again, blues tend to be a key thing in quite a lot of either head trauma or other areas of it. Plus, we got people with synesthesia who've actually seen specks, which are like fuzzy snow, which they know are their ancients from this one particular person who comes from indigenous cultures, where it's almost like their ancestors are there, but they're trying to give information. So this is kind of correlating with what we're seeing in other conversations, which is fantastic, which I know you haven't heard those conversations because I haven't let them loose on the world yet, unless you were here at the time. So it makes sense. So, Melissa?
Yeah, I was going to say that sometimes if I can feel there's an entity there or an energy, because I for me, we're all energy, right? So I know, I'm sure a lot of you know that. But once we become spirits, then we're pure energy. And so for me, when I feel the energy there, a lot of the times I will see like a royal blue color, but it's more like shards of light. And then that's when I feel a tingling sensation. But I wanted to ask, do you meditate at all? And then because like I went to a spiritual school here, and then that closed down. And for myself also, for a long time, couldn't find a mentor until I went to a really strong psychic who she actually saw my Native American guide. And I knew she was the truth because I had seen him as well with my third eye in a meditation. And I saw him clear as day, and he was talking to me, but I couldn't actually hear what he was saying. But I trusted that all of that information was stored in my subconscious mind. When I went to see her, she saw the exact same guide. And so then I trusted that she has a very strong ability. And I asked her then, I need a mentor. And she's now become my mentor that I see probably once a month or every 2 months. But when we went to spiritual school, we were taught that meditation is key. And it's like going to the gym. So when you're going to the gym, you need to build a muscle. And this is like an internal muscle that we all have the ability to get in touch in, like to tap into. We just need to strengthen that. So I was just out of curiosity, do you ever meditate?
100%. I meditate every day, if not several times a day. And I do feel that if I even skip a day, that I have just lost a little bit of the connection, even if it's just a little bit. So I hunt that meditation. And when I meditate, it's actually visualizations that I'm doing. So I'm visualizing myself, grounding myself, visualizing myself grounding the room that I'm in, visualizing the protection, the colors around me that are protecting me. So I'm in that meditative state, as in, I'm calm, I'm relaxed, I'm not having of these like random thoughts going through my head, but my meditation focused on what I'm visualizing. And the reason I'm doing that is because what I can create in my mind, I know and this is my program as well when I mentor. But when you have a vision come in your mind, something that you hear, a vision or any other way that a message is through, and you recognize that I did not create that, now you know that message is spirit. So that's actually how I teach them to do these visualizations. So when you're creating it versus when a message is coming in from spirit.
That's a great answer on these things. I just want to make sure that I've got this right when we're talking about blue, and Ian can correct me on this. In blue light, it's accelerated vibration, yeah, Ian?
Yeah, as far as I'm aware, the higher energy would shift everything up to the blue. Yeah.
So this is one of the bits that, as I was saying to you, Brandi, that we're starting to see a lot of people correlate with the blue higher vibration with these events. I've also got a question from Alexi, and then I'll get to Myron, because these are really good questions that are coming in. Alexi's in Russia, and he's got a good thirst for knowledge. And in this, he's asking through one of the tweets is, because he's got an interest in non-human intelligence, if they exist, how do they operate? And also with obvious evolution is proof that the ideas can function and improve without conscious decisions, or are they human? The interesting thing is, when we actually leave our body, and I'm just tagging on to the end of Alexi's one there for you, Brandi, obviously human is just our term for what we are here, but when we go elsewhere or consciousness is outside of it, what do you consider it to be?
So what I consider it is, so I'm actually a star. So I know that actually I have a different planet that was not human before this lifetime. So this is my first time being a human. So there's so many other, if you want to call them an entity, there's so many other things that we can be. And so I almost say it's like, how there's different animals, and like we're one of those animals on this planet. So we're all on the same planet, but we're all these different like breeds of different types of animals. And that's how I see it, as you could be from a planet that, maybe humans have never even heard of, and we don't even know it's out there, but different things that are out there that you communicate with. So whether I'm communicating with an entity that's never been a human, an ascended master that is, someone who is very angelic and they don't even need to be a human, they're already ascended, a spirit guide, a guardian angel. There's so many different, the way I describe them is like layers of how they've ascended. And so that's, I guess, how I would describe them.
Excellent, because people have heard me describe this before. And again, we know language can be misinterpreted all over the place. That for existence, I think, is a bit of a paradox at the moment in 2023, because you've heard this before from me, that as far as I know at this present time, you need two or more things to actually create a reaction to make something new. So how does existence pop in? And where do you get that from in the first place? Otherwise, it's just paradoxical. But when it comes down to it, if we're looking at our universe, I reckon there's consciousness, and then all material and other bits and pieces inside of that is consciousness, but we haven't got the real name for it. But when we're human, obviously we have to disguise ourselves as human, but we could have been a rock, could have been a planet, could have been anything in between with these things. So what you've been saying fits again with the majority of the people's conversations that we've had before over a period of time. Once Myron's got his question in, I got a few more tweets from Alexi, so that will connect up to this. Does that make sense to you, Brandi, from what I've just said in kind of what I think?
Yeah, absolutely. And just as Melissa was saying, everything has energy. So, if you're a psychometrist is someone who can hold an object and they can feel the energy of what that object has experienced. So
That's Melissa.
Just like as you a rock, or if you were something in another life, someone in this life who's a psychometrist who has this, could hold that rock and know what that rock is. So maybe where it was located or how long it's been, on this earth. So, or do that with something like your great grandma's necklace who you've never met. If you're a psychometrist,
that's Melissa's talent.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
That is Melissa's talent.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So if you hold that object, you can, by the energy, know what that object experienced. So yeah, absolutely could have been a rock or anything else.
Superb. I'm going to come to Myron, and thank you very much for being patient there. And then once we go to Melissa, in between that, I have a few more ones from Alexi, but I just want to intersperse them within the conversation. Then obviously, as we're evolving, Myron?
Yeah. Brandi, do you have a particular spirit guide, or is it whatever manifests itself, or do you use a particular spirit guide during your meditations? I'm curious about that. That's number one. And number two, when I meditate every day, like you, usually about 2 or 3 hours. And a long time ago, I played a trick on myself, and I'm actually, Charon told me to assume that it's a million years in the future, and everybody that you've ever known and everything you've ever done and anything that you have any problems with no longer exists. So you're out there by yourself. That way, there's no distraction. There's no thinking about, oh, I've got to pay my bills, or my stomach hurts, or I've got to get to work, or whatever, because those things don't exist anymore. I used it as a trick when I was first starting to meditate, to get into the meditation very quickly, because there was nobody left on earth. My daughter was long gone millions of years ago, and so it was just a way of clearing my mind. So when I was meditating, it would be a free field to connect to the entities that I was going to be working with. And then as far as extraterrestrial is concerned, I've been going to a planet called Zelkon for 70 years, and more than that, actually. And it's in Orion's belt, and my spirit guide has been taking me there to teach me things for, probably much longer than this lifetime. And because once I get there, time does no longer exist. There is no time on Zelkon. It just is. And so the information that's given to me on Zelkon sometimes has to do with this reality, and sometimes it has to do with other reality that have nothing to do with this reality. And one thing that I found was, I was on Zelkon one day with Charon, and Charon and I worked together as like a pair, and so it's a he, she, or it. So it manifests itself in 3 different kind of manifestations. Right now it's a she, because I'm getting older. So anyway, the point is that we were on Zelkon one day, and I saw all these other couples walking around the planet. And I asked Charon, can we go talk to them? There's a bunch of them. And can we go over and talk to them? Because they must have information. They're probably not from Earth. So it would be interesting to be able to talk to them. And Charon said, we absolutely cannot go over and talk to them. My spirit guide doesn't let me know things that I am not prepared to internalize. When I'm ready, he reveals whatever the mystery is. But until I'm ready, she keeps it back. So time passed like 10 years. And we were on Zelkon again, and there were all these doubles walking around, these couples walking around, a spirit guide and a person. And I said, "Can we talk to them now?" And and Charon said, "Yes, we can, except we won't." And I said, "Why not?" And Charon said, "Because all of those doubles are you and I in a different dimension. So they can't talk to each other and we can't talk to them. Because if we were to go over and even touch them, we would no longer exist. All of us would just disappear." And it was a way of showing me the multidimensional part of our psyches, that just because, that I was born on the earth does not mean that my souls have anything to do with Earth. It could be in another galaxy, in another time space continuum. It could be any time, and it has nothing to do with being grounded on Earth, unless that's your objective. And my objective was always to be part of cosmic consciousness, and one of the ways that to do that is to let go of terrestrial thing and become part of the universe. And these other couples that were walking around, I never got to talk to them because we couldn't get within a certain distance of them, even though they were all me and they were all Charon. But I could feel the unification of all of that energy between all of us. And they all came from different places in the universe, and none of them came from Earth. And I'll finish this up by saying that I remember part of the Gnostic tradition was that, you're walking around one day and you get this kind of call from nowhere, and first you blow it off, and I'll make it short. You blow it off, and then it stays with you, and then after a time it keeps calling, and then you have this awakening, as they called it, and so you awaken to something else. Now, you don't really know what that is at first, but you awaken to this other thing, and it's really another place that. And then as the next step is that you recognize that you're really not from here. You're not from Earth. You're not from here. You have not, that's all an illusion. And the final stage is acceptance, and to go into where your origin is, which has nothing to do with this planet or anything on it. Now, Gnosticism is 2,000 years old, and it was in competition with Christianity in the early days, but it died out when Christianity kind of took over during the Roman Empire. But the fact is that mythology so superimposed itself over exactly what I was doing. I felt a call to go to Zelkon. I used to be taken there by my spirit guide, which is another planet and has nothing to do with Earth. And it was by letting go of all of the needs of being terrestrial with this kind of gravity and all that kind of stuff that I could start going out of body here and go there quickly, all during meditation, of course. But sometimes I could do it when I had those two questions. One, do you have a spirit guide? Two, sometimes if I'm walking along, I can walk right into Zelkon, and I don't see the Earth anymore, not until I get out of it. Now, that can be 20 minutes, an hour, 2 hours, 5 hours, a very long time. Now, I have temporal lobe epilepsy, so everybody seems to think that that's a seizure, but I don't think it's a seizure, but they do. And so I was going to ask you about that. Have you ever bilocated and gone to some other dimension and spent time there, like, because I do that on a kind of regular basis, and I just sort of like walk through a door and I'm in this other dimension. It isn't always Zelkon. It's can be another dimension. So those are the two questions besides my history lesson. And one, do you have a spirit guide? And two, could you or do you just sort of find yourself in an altered state of consciousness in a different place, just walking into it? Now, sometimes there's a doorway, an entrance, but it's not always. Sometimes I'm just walking down the street and all of a sudden it's like I'm just walking through a fog and I find myself in this other place. Those are my
Okay.
questions.
I was going to say, we need to let her respond to those ones. And then, Brandi, once you've responded in detail, if you'd like to bring in Melissa.
Sure. So I definitely have more than one spirit guide. I have about 6 or 7. I feel like I have a spirit guide for each personality. So feeling vulnerable, I'll call in my spirit guide for protection. Or let's say I'm feeling not very talkative or I'm feeling shy that day, I'll call in my spirit guide for confidence. So I do have 6 or 7 that I usually use or call on. I think I actually do have more than that, but the ones that I use. And I also feel like my spirit guides go with my different clair traits. So if I need to be clairvoyant, if I want to see images, I'll call on my clair spirit guide for clairvoyant. Or if I be clairaudiente, I'll call on my spirit guide so that I'm able to hear messages. So even though they might have different and more than one purposes for me, I don't feel like I have really one spirit guide that I call on like that you do. So I feel like I do have multiple. And then your second question, the place that I go more than anything, and I can get there in a few minutes, is the spirit world. So because I'm a medium, I'm constantly speaking with the dead. So a deceased loved one, someone who has passed, I can literally close my eyes in 5 minutes of meditation and I can talk to anyone who has passed away. I also see.
Oh, can I just pause you on that one? Because as we don't actually see inside your head on this point, do you have any way of describing what you see when this happens?
So it's almost as though I go through a door, like Myra just said, like I'm going through a doorway, and then it gets actually really dark. So I'm almost seeing like this forest, like a very dark forest energy and like a woods. And then as I go like even further into the woods, then it gets very bright. Once it gets bright, that's when I can see all the spirits. So they're actually how can I describe it? Like in white, but almost like effervescent. So they're not really solid. I'm almost can see through them, but I'm seeing a white color that like is their symbol. And then I can talk to who I want to talk to them there. But yeah, hard for me to meditate without visualization, because if I'm just meditating, I go into that spirit world. And then my thoughts, I do have thoughts, but they're not my own. They're now of a deceased loved one or someone who has passed. So when I get into that heavy meditate of not having my own thoughts, all of these other thoughts to my mind. So that's why I have to add them in so that I can focus on something and so that they're not constantly bombarding me with these messages. But that's to go any day, every day, all day, spirit world and talk to dead people. Yeah.
Sorry, do you want me to come through?
Oh, yes, I'm sorry.
Yes, you can.
I was waiting for
No, sorry, I let Brandi do it, but obviously
I forgot.
that's okay.
No.
Oh, by the way, just a quick question, Brandi. Are you quite happy with the format that we're doing at the moment?
Yeah, that's fine.
You can say other things if you want, but we will edit that out if you do. Right, Melissa?
Yeah, so I've only ever seen 2 of my spirit guides. I'm sure we have more. But my other one that I saw clear as day was an Inca. And I saw him when I was getting a healing done, and he came right up to my face, and he looked different to my native guide. But again, I didn't say anything. But the healer, he said, he's a shaman, and he said, "I saw your guide," and I was like, "Yeah, he was an Inca, and he had this big gold thing," and he was like, "Yeah, I saw." And so then I went to mentor. I didn't say anything to her, and he actually drew at a point when I was going through a really tough time. And she said, "Oh, I've got your guides come through, but he's come through as a younger version of himself." But in my mind, I was like, "No, this is a completely separate one." And I didn't say anything to her. And then just as I was thinking, she started to work it out and say, "Actually, no, he's telling me no, I'm a different one." And he called himself a warrior. And So then she validated for me that, okay, she's spot on, and clearly I have a strong connection with her. And she validated what I sensed as well with my second guide. With the cycle, I just wanted to say, it's something that I tend not use too often, only because I get very sensitive when I am holding an object of my clients. Like, for an example, I was reading for him, and then I saw the ring, and something strongly told me to hold it. And as soon as I placed it in my hand, I got quite emotional. I couldn't stop crying, and that was it. The rest of the reading was me crying to him, holding this ring, and it all had to do with father and who had passed. And I said to him, "This ring belonged to your father, didn't it?" He said yes. So I try not to do too much psychometry. I love doing it because it gives me very clear guidance. Another time I was doing it.
Can I just ask you about that particular instance, because you've probably got everybody else fascinated as well as myself, that when you were having the information that was coming from the ring, was it just emotional content, visual, or feelings, or what kind of thing was happening?
It was all kinetic. It was all feeling. It was all, yeah. It was
so it's his feelings or your feelings?
I'm not sure if it was the feelings of the father.
And obviously, was it a joy to make you cry, or was it a pain kind of related crying?
It was a longing. Like, it was emotional. It was like I felt sad. So it could have been, I think it was the energy that was coming from the father when he was wearing it. So that, but I find another time I felt emotional was when I was very, very young, and something, I don't know what, guided me to go into my mother's room, get this massive jewelry box she used to have, and she had my grandfather's watch. You lift up one piece, and then my grandfather's watch was underneath. I took the jewelry box into my room, sat there like it was like like I had a new toy, and I put the watch on. And this was probably the first time I realized that we can be affected by other people's energy. So I put the watch on, and I couldn't stop crying. And it was very emotional. I felt very sad. And then I just remember throwing it on the ground going, oh my gosh. And I went over and I said, Mum, who took off Bapul's watch when he had passed? And she says, your grandmother did. I said, was she crying when she did that? And she said, yeah. And I said, because I think I felt her pain. That's when I was younger, but now growing up and her experience with it, I feel like it was the energy from him, from when he was wearing it and he was passing. And it was, it's hard to explain what I was feeling, but I was feeling emotionally sad. Another time was when my friend had passed away, and we were at the wake, and we were talking to, people, and his girlfriend's mum approached me, and we were talking, and somehow we got onto the topic of psychometry, and she said, do you mind wearing my mum's watch and my mum's ring and seeing what comes up? And I touched it. As soon as I placed it in my hand, I felt a very sharp pain in my breast. And I was just like, ow, I didn't give it back because it hurt. And I said, did she pass of breast cancer? And she said, yes. So for me to feel, that's why I tend to use psychometry too much, because I feel too much when I hold the object.
Melissa, you had no knowledge of the other woman's mother at all in any way. There was no connection to you, really.
Not at all.
Can be found.
Yeah, not at all. I didn't have it even with a client with the ring. I had no connection to him either. He was a client. So I had no idea that his father had passed away, nothing. I was just doing a reading. I saw his ring. I said, do you mind if I hold that ring while we do the reading? He said, yeah. And then as soon as I held it, I could feel the emotion.
And obviously from yourself, sorry, Melissa, I thought there was a pause there. I was just going to say to yourself and Brandi and others that actually do this, you're not picking up micro expressions or anything to read the person cold to actually get that information, are you?
No,
there's no way you could do that.
No, and this is the thing too. When my clients come in, they'll sit opposite you with a poker because they don't want in the way either. So they'll just look at you with a blank face until emotions start to kick in. So when I held the ring, it was all about his dad. It was all the information that was coming through was all about his father. And then that was how I was able to make the connection. This ring belonged to your dad, didn't it? And he said yes.
Yeah, with that, I'm just going to ask Brandi, and obviously I see you there with your hand up, Michael and Mimi, and we haven't met Mimi before, so that would be good. But Brandi, you obviously don't read people at that point with micro expressions. It's literally just like you got an open internet connection to information.
Yeah, I will use psychometry in terms of if I have someone in front of me to do a mediumship reading and they want to connect. Before they come to the meeting, I'm always telling them to, invite their deceased loved one to come, think of their memories, start to think of them, invite them, give them permission to join us. And then if they're there with me, I'll give them a crystal or thing to hold on to while I do it with them in a spiritual experience at the beginning. And then they hand me that object back. So while I'm doing it, I don't do it all the time, but I'll be holding, and that sometimes can amplify the reading. But my one is that I had with psychometry, if I could share it, was one of my friends gave me this knife. I knew nothing about this knife. And when I held it, I was seeing like all these around me and they were dying, and I could see myself. I was being blood, and I threw the knife because I was like, what is going on? And here his great grandfather was in, like, I forget which World War One and World War, and I was actually what he's seeing, like fighting in the war. And then like I swore from that I was the object again because it was so. I felt like I had to him. You know what I mean? That's
Well,
how
the overload would
strong
be
it
too
was.
much, yeah.
Oh yeah,
You
it
wouldn't
was
be able to
super
separate your
intense.
own personality from that experience and almost kind of like losing yourself.
Yes, it was nuts. Anyway, that was it.
I'm going to bring Michael in, but I just want to find out if, Melissa, is your hand up for another question, or has it just not gone down?
No, it was in relation to earlier when we were talking about different planets. For me, I was just going to
You just
quickly
jumped
say,
Michael. Can you?
well, you jumped in me. All right, go. You can bring me back.
See what I did for you, Michael?
Thank you, Paul. Look, there was a couple of things I wanted to kind of address quickly. Was going all the way back to Ouija boards. I've never done it, and one of the reasons I think you're tapping into a group energy, so you've really got to trust the other people that are involved in that session. So that's one of the reasons why. Well, I've had the opportunities, but I've chosen not to do it. And when I do group stuff, I generally know the people pretty well. So I think that's one of the really important things to consider. And the other thing was when Meyer was talking going to other worlds, I was remembering one of my experiences where I'd gone through a series of wormholes. I'd left, I don't know if I'd left this planet or I left this dimension, but I got onto the edge of a fifth dimensional world, so 2 vibrational levels above.
Oh, before you go through that, was that through meditation or accident or some other kind of way that you suddenly started to find yourself traveling?
No, that was in meditation, and it was with 2 other friends, and that was really useful because it kind of validated part of the experience, or added some more strength to it. And it kind of covers 2 that we were talking about. So.
I'm sorry, but you said you found yourself on the edge of something.
Yes.
Was that altogether you found yourself somewhere? If you could just explain about that. Sorry for interrupting, but that was key, I felt.
Yes. So it started off in the meditation. I normally start off on a platform, and then I went into a wormhole that opened up on the platform, and then I had a series of vibrational changes, of which there's a geometry that I've talked about before. And so it was 2/3 of the way through that. I actually went up another level after this, but en route, I stopped at the edge of a 5th dimensional world. And like Myron, I wasn't allowed to go into there, but we communicated, and we did it by images. So they let me know that they were really seeing a human child or human baby, and so they gave me a doll, and then I was able to get back of a real physical human child. So and then when I came out of that, one of my other friends said, wow, that must have been pretty amazing. We saw you blast off in the beam of light, and then there were 2 light beings behind you, and I knew, I could feel that they were there, and they knew I could feel they were there. But and that's kind of what it's like with my guidance, is I know they're there, but they want to keep in the background. And the only time I've ever actually been heard from them was when I was opening a lift door to another dimension and allowing other people to come in, and they screamed at me no, so I wasn't allowed to let those in. But anyway, go on for ages, as I know lots of us can, but they linked with other things.
I think that's good because, again, every time we open up the rabbit hole, we go down deeper and deeper, which is amazing. What I would like to do is bring in Mimi and find out if they've actually read the guidelines above, etc. And then we go to, obviously, Centered Awareness and Brandi. So, Mimi, welcome.
And thank you. I love
Have you
it.
had? Sorry,
Hello.
continue.
Thank you for letting me speak in your space. I just wanted to talk about how I became connected as a human being. I'm a dreamer, and I remember me as a little girl. Okay. I remember my mother. I'm a military brat, by the way. She used to put me on a church bus, but she would never go with me. But I noticed my father, he served the military. He was always overseas. I'm like, didn't even dawn on me. I was happy. I was getting the bubble gum. I was able to dress up for Easter, whatever. My mother will always put me on the church bus. And I'm like, okay, cool. I was happy. 6, 7, 8. Daddy would come home, and I can always remember he would always come home and he would travel across the world. He was the human being, the man in the house that implemented the Bible. I remember that it's a big, nice, pretty Bible still at my mother's home, and it's in the cabinet. I'm going to go get it. And it's from the Coliseum. All that type of stuff. Military man, he is. I just want to go back to me. This is when I realized I'm like touched. You know how some people can say, like, if you've seen the alien, you wouldn't even know what to do. If they was there, you'd probably pass out or what have you. But see, I'm touched because I remember my dreams. I always wanted to be something. And I remember when I was going to school, I would pass math like nothing is math. By the way, I'm a Libra. Because if you look at the symbol of a Libra, it's the scales. It's responsible for like finance or something. I will always pass math, but I cannot gather government and politics or whatever. So I already knew I was connected. But I did have to go to summer school, and I did go, figured out the government, graduated high school diploma. Throughout my life, I decided to start messing around and got caught up in trouble, if you will. My dad was pissed off, right? Because I already know he is
Just a quick one, Mimi. On the guidelines, we tried to keep everything family friendly on the language side. Okay. So
I just want to just talk about how I got touched and got connected.
Could you describe what you mean by touch? Because obviously there's different people from around the world and it could mean different things elsewhere. Got a generalization of what you mean by that, please?
Okay, so what I mean by touch, like, I believe the Creator gave us our DNA, and it's up to you to utilize it and pay attention to your dreams or what have you. Be careful what you pray for and wish for, because I would get in trouble and I'd be in situations like, I just pray to have a better life and so on and so on. Did it have to take me, myself, to get in trouble? Yes, because the Creator wanted to sit me down because you have it. We all have it. It's up to, kind of like connect and channel in. So I just started paying attention to like people like me. They like my charisma. They like everything. I have it, but I started beating myself up because I had people around me. You suck, or you're not going to accomplish whatever that is, negativity. But I know I'm inspiring. You guys are listening to me. And again, thank you for letting me speak. But to be connected, you have to go through something to get there. And that was my example of me having to get in trouble. And the Lord set me down. And
Mimi, I'm going to apologize for butting in, but it will make sense. A lot of people that are in this room and a lot of things that we've seen, everyone's gone through some kind of trauma or something that has made you suddenly taken you out of routine and made you realize there is absolutely something else through intention and all these kind of things. So what you're saying really does connect with us.
And thank you. And I would just say, pay attention to your dreams, because we do have that language and it's abbreviated. It's called DNA. But if you really look at DNA, the abbreviation for DNA is diagnose. It's pretty cool, right? And I'm not even a doctor. But if you pay attention to blood, right? If you do something, you'll get caught or whatever. I'm not trying to go there because I'm very special and I'm just trying to share and have fun with you guys. But pay attention to your dreams. Your dreams are very important. And I believe in epiphanies. I'm going to give you my example of an epiphany. If you have, but I had a dream where no matter what, I would hear the people. And I'm like, these are the people that hurt me, but I can't see their heads, but I hear their voices. But it's always like in a building or something, or it's something like a pretty building that gave me peace in that dream. But I never been to that building. And then years later, something happens. I get married or something. And then me and my husband and out here just traveling. And I'm like, husband, I've seen this building before. That's because it was in my dreams. We already are born into our DNA. And I just wanted to land the plane real quick, and I'm going to hush up, but I'm already connected. Some of you may not believe me, but we're already connected. It's up to you to do that because the creator is amazing.
Oh,
Okay, go
definitely,
ahead.
because with the way we're looking at things, and again, as we say, language is just not correct for doing these things or putting art. It just doesn't express everything. Everything's connected in so many different ways because obviously we know about quantum physics where all the energy is all connected. You're passing through each other and you've got different kinds of ways of seeing things. So what you're putting forward does connect with a lot of people within the room, and I'm sure with Brandi as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Like whenever you have a dream like that.
Let me say this real quick, Miss Brandi, because I know you want to read me because I can read people too, and I don't like to do it because that's the gift I have. Sometimes you might not like it, but I just want y'all to pay attention to one thing I noticed about the Bible. The Bible, per humanity, per biblical, is governed, right? Because we have the right to govern our bodies. It's the meant part for me. And if you think about what I just said, it's the government trying to take over your government. Is that fair? Thank you.
I was just going to say, if you have a dream of something and then later on you see that it comes true, that's called precognition. And that is a type of psychic ability that some people do have.
That's good because, again, there's also the other thing about infinite realities as well, where you can possibly see other places. I know you've been having your hand up there for a long while, Melissa. We'll obviously then go to Alexi after, obviously, Brandi has responded to Melissa, and then obviously from Alexi to Myron.
I was just going to go back to when everyone was talking about coming from different planets. I don't feel like I've come from a different planet. I feel like I hung out in the spiritual realm for a long time, because I don't feel like I've been here for a long time. I know I've been here before, but I don't feel like I've been for a long time. And what I found was one time I went to she was a very good medium, and she validated that for me as well without me even saying anything. She said, are you the youngest out of your family? And I was like, no. And she said, well, I feel like your brother and sister have been here more than what you've been here. And I said, yeah, it's funny you say that because I've always felt that. And she says, I feel like although you're the eldest, I feel like you're a young energy, like you're an old soul.
Well, how do you diagnose that? How do you do that? Just curious.
Just one bit, Mimi. We tend to put our hands up to make sure that we get everyone have their own opportunity to speak, but we can get that response from Melissa to yourself. Yes.
For me, it was more of a knowing. I felt like I haven't been here for a long time. Like I felt like I've been here before because I've gone to places and they felt familiar to me energetically, but I haven't been here for a long time. Whereas lots of times I would find my brother or my sister say to me, like try to give me advice on how to do things or how to be here, kind of a thing. Like it was hard to explain. But when she said to me, I feel like you're a younger energy because you haven't been here as often as they've been here. So, and that resonates. But I also feel like this will be my last life. I don't know. I've always felt that. I always felt like, I don't think I'll be coming back here. So I don't know, but that could just be my thoughts, that could be a feeling, but I've always felt like, I don't think I was meant to come back here after this life. So I don't know. Like I said, it could just be my thoughts or how I'm feeling. But yeah, I've never felt like I've come a different planet. I've felt like I've felt that quite a lot. But yeah, I've never felt like I've come from another planet. Just felt like I hung out in the spiritual realm for a very long time.
Do you have any thoughts on that on Brandi before we bring Alexi in?
I definitely do. So in the spirit world, I mean, as you guys, I'm sure all know that there is no time. So she says she was there for a long time. It could have been, 1,000 years of human time, which felt like 1 minute in the spirit world. But I do believe that we actually all are still in the spirit world, even though we're humans right now. So, for us to have 100% of our energy all in one spot on this human earth, I don't really believe that. If anyone's ever read the Spirits book by Alan Kardec, it's about the Spiritist doctrine, and it's about how maybe only 80% of our energy is here, and then 20% of our energy stays in the spirit world. And that's how we're able to reincarnate. We're able to see our past loved ones who have maybe reincarnated, but some of them are still, a piece of them is still in the spirit world. So, but to her point, to Melissa's point, if she felt like she was never here before, and then if she feels like this is her last time here, then I feel like you are most likely an angel here on earth. So you may have already ascended, already been in the spirit world, and are just here to help during this one lifetime. Maybe you were meant, just to help others, and then you'll stay in the spirit world. So you're not the first person I've heard say that. And usually if I would do a reading on you, I would be able to see that you're an angel. So that's usually how whenever I hear
Brandi,
that's what I
you a
correlate with
question?
it.
I promise I'll leave. Miss Brandi, please, real quick.
It's up to Paul. Paul's is in charge here.
Can I?
So again, Mimi, as you can imagine, that we're trying to make sure that everyone gets the opportunity to get their own time for talking.
I'm on topic. She's speaking. Can I just ask Miss Brandi a question?
You can be very quick, but I really do like to keep making sure that we have the right order of people to go through, because then it's polite to them because they've been waiting that particular time. So, again, I don't know if you had the opportunity to read the guidelines in the nest or not on the room.
A question for Miss Brandi.
No, could you just ask me? Okay. Could you just reply to me? Have you actually read the guidelines in the nest?
Yes.
Okay, so you understand that what we're trying to be is polite to everyone here, make sure everyone's got the right opportunity and the intention is set correctly. So this is the reason why I mentioned this. So yes, you can answer this one, but then I'm going to make sure that the next time, if you can just put your hands up like everyone else does, and that'd be great, and we can keep it all on track.
I just promise I'm going to leave. Miss Brandi?
Yes.
Okay, so because I spoke about my abilities to understand DNA, I noticed that the world is upside down per us being here, second life, third life, whatever you want to talk about. I just noticed that the COVID shot, it affected a whole bunch of DNA. So you cannot repopulate the repopulation. I think Christ is upset about that. And that's why we have these spaces. That's what I feel. That's my belief. That's my alien belief. How do you feel about that?
I definitely disagree. I don't see how a shot would change DNA, so I don't agree with that, but I can respect that you feel that way.
Excellent. So, Alexi,
if I say this, because we need to have good DNA to repopulate per humanity, right? And that's why I say this. Y'all notice how like Trump is like a general president and stuff. I'm not gonna just go ahead. Just carry on. I'm leaving. Thank you for letting me speak.
No, you can stay. You can stay and listen and participate. It's just that obviously we make sure the guidelines are all there to make sure it participates correctly. If you're quite happy with those rules and the way that it all fills within the room. Are you, Mimi?
I got you.
Are you happy with those? Yeah.
I'm gonna hang out for a little because
that's good.
But that's a good question. If you think about the DNA that has been infected by the COVID shot that wasn't good for the DNA, I think something is happening. And that's why we have so much open borders, corruption, and I like it, but it's okay. We're going to all be uncomfortable, but it's time for these spaces to have conversations about it. Thank you.
Okay. Brandi, I just want to make sure that you're good for time still, yeah?
Yes, yep, I'm good. Thank you.
Excellent, superb. Alexi, if you want to come in, and then once Alexi's finished his question, then Brandi, you can bring Myron in. Yeah.
Yeah. Hi. I have 3 questions. First question is for Melissa. Is her spirit guide? What is the name of the second spirit guide? Second, for Brandi, what is her experience of precognition? And third, just general, what non-human intelligences are there, and can we investigate it? If we can, how? Yeah, that's the question.
Did you want me to go first?
Yeah, go ahead, Melissa.
Brandi?
Yep.
Okay. For me, I was never given it to any of my guides. So my Native American Indian chief, I could just call him Chief. And the warrior, we were never really given a name like John or whatever. And the reason I'm warrior is because when my mentor said, he's a younger version of the native, but then he corrected her and he said he prefers to be called a warrior, but that's not his actual name. So when I refer to him or I call for him, I just call him my warrior.
Great. And then to answer your next question about, sorry, go ahead. Did you want to talk? Okay. So I was just going to say about the precognition. So there's different things that people can experience that you might not even realize is a psychic ability. And for precognition, those are things like if you get like a gut feeling that something bad's going to happen, then you might base your like actions off of those feelings. Another one would be if you experience deja vu a lot. That's another precognition ability. Others are like what I was saying with the dreams. So if you have very vivid dreams, or if you're a lucid dreamer, a lucid dream means that you're conscious when you're in the dream that you are dreaming. So you can actually say to yourself, like, I know I'm dreaming, or you can say like, I'm dreaming, go up to the sky and fly, and then you can actually control your dreams. So if someone has vivid or lucid dreams, that's precognition. Those are pretty much the biggest ones. And then I wasn't sure if you had another question on that, or was that the only thing you had there?
Yeah, third question was general. What do you think, how do non-human intelligence operate? Not ChatGPT, but others that exist. Or it's a question to the whole room, or
sure,
if you can.
Okay. So I don't go there very often, but if I do go to like another realm or another planet, I always find that those they don't have gravity like we do on Earth. So they're not stuck there all the time. So I see that they're going like to all these other places and they're able to come back and leave as they please. It's not like this heavy, dense gravity like we have on Earth. So they're actually able to just go do wherever they want to go and then come back. But that's just my own experiences. And I don't have many, like I said, but that's what I don't know if anybody else wants to jump in on that.
I know Myron can add to this before anybody else sort of comes in and puts it in. But again, as you, Alexi, are really kind of focusing on is the fact that whatever we call intelligence or being, again, we've spoken about this before, that if you imagine a wheel flat down and you're looking at the spoke coming into the hub, there is so many different existences that you're kind of participating in all at the same time, and sometimes you're aware of the other ones, maybe through dreams or other bits and connections. So that's always fascinating to me, and again, it's very similar to how Brandi has discussed things. So Myron?
Yeah, a couple of things. I I did for about 25 years. I did readings for many people, maybe hundreds, and
could you explain what kind of reading it was? Was it tarot or just feeling of somebody or some other formation?
It was tarot and the Ching. And I used them both for each reading. So it wouldn't be one oracle, it would be two. And interestingly enough, they always matched, which was fascinating. And but I wanted to talk a little bit about precognition. I have a lot of precognitions about seeing the future, and they come when they come. But when they do come, there is an actual circumstance, and most of them are witnessed. So, like one day I was sitting, I was a vice president in a corporation, so I was sitting in front of a client, a lawyer, no less, who was running a huge law firm. And I had a precognition that he needed to call his home immediately. And I mean, now. And then I thought, all right, if I tell this man that he needs to call his home, he's going to think I'm nuts. And and if I don't do it, then I'm violating my own oath to my own spirit world, spirit guides. And so I wrestled the whole time I was talking to him. I was wrestling whether I should tell him or not. And then time was moving on. So I thought I better tell him. And if I'm wrong, I'm just wrong. And if they don't do business with us because they think I'm nuts, well, then they just don't do business. So I told him, I said, Mr. So-and-so, I think you should call your home right now. I mean, right now. And he said, what? And I said, call your home now. And I knew why. I didn't want to tell him. So he called his home, and the maid had answered. And she said, yes. And I said, tell your maid to go to your daughter's now, right now. And so so this guy said, go to my daughter's room and check. And when she got in there, the room was on fire, and the child would have burned to death, no question about it. And because the fire had been sparked by some toys that she had. And so that was one kind of precognition that I have pretty regularly. And when I saw him again, he sort of made a joke about, I should take you to the racetrack. We'd make a fortune. I said, well, it doesn't quite work like that. You took me to the racetrack, you probably lose all your money. And I said, these intuitions come when they come, and I don't fight it. I just go with it. And interestingly enough, when Charon tells me something is going to happen, it always happens. Always, no matter how banal a thing it may be. And I don't understand sometimes why she tells me these things. I think some of it was to build trust, and some of it was to for some other reason. But even something as banal as Department of Motor Vehicles, I got a card from them that said I was going to have to take the test, the eye test, the driving test, and the written test. And I went, oh God, this is when I was like 65 or something. And I went, oh man, so I better study the book. I'll probably fail it. And Charon said, you're not going to have to take the driver's test or the written test. And I went, but it says right here on the card, those boxes are marked. I'm going to have to take those tests. So I studied and all that kind of stuff. When we arrived at the DMV, the woman looked at me and she said, read the eye chart. I read the eye chart. She said, now go over and get your picture taken. I went over and got my picture taken, and I came back and I was getting ready to go over and take the test. And she said, you're done. Now, Charon knew way beforehand that I was not going to have to take the test or the driver's test. And yet they're right there on the card, and she signed off on it. So Charon's been giving me insights into the future and my own future and others since it first appeared when I was 4, when I came out of the coma that I was in. And precognition has been an interesting thing for me because it's part of readings. When I look at people, I get a sense of them. And I can tell within just a few minutes what my relationship is going to be with that person by using this intuitive connection. And sometimes Karen will tell me, leave this place and never come back.
Myron, can I just ask you and Brandi at the same time, when we're talking about in front of people, you can feel the connection and understand who they are. What about distance? I'm asking obviously yourself, Myron, first, then Brandi, about that, because that's another thing that we've been looking at is like distance healing. So is it the same way that you could get, just say, from my voice or having a name put in front of you? Could you feel something from that?
Yeah, it has nothing to, in my case, I don't know about Brandi. In my case, distance hasn't got anything to do with it. I was sitting in my room one day meditating, and I got a message to call a friend of mine in New York, and there was I don't want to explain this particular one, but I got this feeling, and so I got up and I made the phone call, and sure enough, there was a problem, and I don't want to go through the problem right now. But so I get things at a distance, even during meditation, even when I'm just walking around. I will think of someone and they'll call me, or I'll think of someone and I'll feel that they're sick and they don't know it. And sometimes I check that by asking Charon about it, and other times I just feel it, and then I make a phone call to them and say, have you had a physical lately? I don't want to get too involved in it. And sometimes they say yes, and they are sick, and other times they say no. And I said, I think you should go and get a physical, especially in your abdominal area. And sometimes they would say, oh, funny thing, you should say that. I've been having trouble with my stomach. I said, go now, go to the doctor. These intuitions seem to come when things are critical, not when they're just sort of day-to-day kind of intuitions. And as far as objects are concerned, there were a few objects. I was at a person who will go unnamed house that is very famous, and was married to a very famous person. And she was very much involved in voodoo and the dark arts. And I walked into her room, and she said, look at my altar. And she had this big cabinet. She was very wealthy, and so she had this big cabinet. And she said, do you want, would you pick up the hand? Now, this is a real human hand, so don't get upset about it. But I said, no, I just soon not do that, if that's okay with you. I can feel the energy from that hand all the way to here, and I don't want anything to do with it. And I don't want anything to do with your cabinet there. I mean, there's so much negative energy in that place that it would just roll me over. And so in my case, when I have, sometimes the intuitions that I get are not intuitions, they're actually orders from Charon. Like, for that particular place where I was actually a guest of my brother, because he was dating this girl. And Charon told me, leave here and never come back, never. And when Charon tells me to do that, I obey what Charon tells me to do. And so whether you want to call that precognition, or whether you want to call that intuition, or whether you want to call that whatever you want to call it,
no, it's a strong psychic ability, isn't it? Because Brandi would agree with that information that was being picked up is like warning bells and everything else that was going on.
Oh yeah, I mean, there's no question about it. And this lady was very, very well known. So it's not like, I mean, all the people that were at this party were wealthy and talented and very well known. And I went up to my brother and I said, I think you should leave, and I'm leaving now, and I'll never come back here ever. And I didn't tell him why. I just did that. And I think that when I used to do readings for people with the tarot cards and the I Ching, you get an Eastern interpretation of the intuition, and you get this Western interpretation of the event. Because the tarot cards are really kind of based in a Christian basis, and the I Ching is, of course, Buddhism. And interesting how they overlap, and they were always right, always.
Definitely. Before we move too far away from that, I just want to find out from Brandi about the connection and distance, and how she works with it.
Yeah, same thing. Distance doesn't really matter at all. I can do a reading over the phone, over Zoom, to people in different parts of the world. So,
do you actually need to? So, for example, if you'd never met Ian before, and I gave you his name, and again, obviously didn't allow you to connect to any of his friends or the internet or anything else like that, you could actually pick up on him.
I'd be able to pick up on him, but mostly because I'm a medium, I would be able to connect on someone that he loves who has passed. So it would be someone close to him who has died, and that's mainly how I can connect with people.
So it would be a kind of strand effect of energy, basically related on vibration. That's the kind of way that it would work. Like, for example, if we looked at it as a spider's web, and you being in the center of it, you'd feel something on one thread and feel that vibration, then follow it through to the edge and that particular strand, which indicates Ian.
And that strand for me is mainly I hear the message. So I would definitely, it's almost like the person that he has lost, the person who has passed over, is going into my consciousness. So I hear it in my voice, but it's not my thought. It would be the person who died, and I'm hearing their thoughts through their consciousness that has transcended through death. And
you can definitely see the divide within that communication, not being just your own normal random thoughts that pass through your head. Yeah.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I
That's
don't
good.
do it. I don't do it quite that way. It doesn't seem to, in my case, it doesn't seem to make any difference what the subject is, who the subject is, what the distance is, or any of those factors. There is something that my spirit guide wants me to connect to with this particular event or person, and I don't question, and I don't want any answers because I just don't. But whatever she tells me to do, I just do it. And the intuition of what I'm feeling, just like it's like a wave, and it just comes over me. And
So it's definitely being on the conduit side. And again, the beautiful thing about all this is that you can tell it's not your own thoughts at the time. It's something different, another kind of form of information, which is phenomenal. Now, obviously, we got two hands up still, where we got Michael and Melissa. And again, if anybody else wants to put their hands up and obviously bring in, once those two questions have been asked, Brandi, I'll keep this in mind to ask you again, that we'll start kind of talking about how you help others in recognizing that ability, and then what you kind of semi-instruct them to do, because then we can actually talk about how it fits in with where we are thinking about consciousness. And again, as we said, this is basically diving in on a very surface layer on this conversation. And again, if Brandi wants to come back and discuss things in further topics down the line, you're more than welcome. And again, you don't have to say what you want to do or not, but these conversations get into very much a deep dive, as you can tell.
I wanted to ask Brandi one more question. And have any of your spirit guides, or have you ever had your life saved by their intervention? The reason I ask that is because that's happened to me on a number of occasions where I would be dead today if Charon had not taken me out of the situation. In one case, I was walking to school and the light turned green and I started to step off the step, and I was pulled back, and a car went right around the corner because they ran the green light. And that car would have killed me dead. There's no question about it. And I turned around to think who it was. And of course, it was Charon who had done that. So that's one. And then I could just name about 5 or 6 interventions where Charon saved my life. Like one time during the war, I was in Vietnam, and I was walking towards a bar that everybody used to go to in Saigon, and Charon said, "Turn around and don't go to the bar. Don't go to the bar today. Just turn around and go back to the barracks." And I was thinking, God, I'm tired. I just worked 16 hours. I'd like to get a drink, but when Charon tells me to do something, I do it. So I turned around, and just as I turned around, the whole bar blew up and killed 27 people inside the bar, and including all the girls and everybody that was in there. They were all blown. So Charon has saved that's just 2 examples. I could give you a half a dozen more. And so in some ways, Charon is like guardian angel in that way, because he knows, or she or it knows, the future. There's some way that this being knows the future. I mean, that's the DMV example. That's the example with the lawyer, and I could give you endless examples of interventions that have saved my life because of information from Charon, who knows and as a matter of fact, well, that's enough. I mean, there's plenty to talk about, but other people who need to talk. So
So has that happened?
If I could ever had that chance, that's what I was.
Knock on wood, I've never had an experience like that, but I've had plenty of people tell me just the same stories that you're telling about them able to, their spirit guide tells them not to do this or to do that, and it helps them and, saves their life. So not me personally, but
Well, hang on, Brandi, but you said at the beginning of this that you were walking through a wood. Lo and behold, there was a figure and a growl, and then you went away. Now, that could have been pushing you away from a direction you shouldn't have been going in.
True. Yeah.
So it might have been saving you in a manner.
Yeah, actually, that's true.
Yeah, that's true. It could have, yeah, because that's true. Because if I wouldn't have had that experience, who knows? Like, I could have went down a very dark occult, dark, magic. Who knows? So yeah, good point.
Because in that way, it might have been part of you, like we're talking about, like there's a higher self, and the only way the higher self could have communicated at that point, because it hadn't known not the communication channels, it could only represent itself in that manner to kind of give you the scares and then turn you away.
Yeah, that's true. And now that you're making me think like that, there's probably been other times where, like, when I was in college and someone offered me a drug to do, and something in my mind, maybe I just was thinking it was my mind saying, like, don't do that drug, you could get addicted to it. Like, maybe it was my spirit guide saying, don't do that, So maybe there were several times, not in the physical sense, but something that definitely was prevented. So that's a good way to look at that. Yeah.
Well, definitely. There's many of us within this environment that have been talking. We've had, during accidents, precognitive kind of visual images saving us or showing us the less damage that could be happened if you didn't take that in split seconds. And that's quite fascinating in that way.
Yeah, that's true. Good way to look at it.
Right. We'll bring Michael in because his hand's probably up there and it's been aching for a long time. And then we'll get Melissa.
Thanks, Paul. Just getting back to the, how we access information. A couple of times I've had dreams where I go to a library and I can access, information on anything really. But one interesting one was I was with an old teacher of mine from school, and I took him to a file and I showed him the file on a company that had a lot of corruption involved with it. And this old teacher had ended up being a radio, what we call in Australia a shock jock. And he, about 3 days later, I heard him on the radio and talking about the corruption in this company and the information they'd found. The other thing I'd say is with so for me, it's kind of like this library that but it's in my dream world. And the other thing is with the precognition, I find that they're the most energetic dreams. Like when I wake up and I'm really, buzzing, for want of a better term, they're the ones that are precognition. And I've had ones where I've been shown scenes and information from, more than a year out. And then in one particular case, that whole scene played out and my mother was part of it. And, once it played out with the people turning up and the fire threatening, all that sort of stuff, I was able to take it to my computer and show her, the journal entry I'd written up a year and 3 days beforehand. So, anyway, at least my mother knows that I'm not that I have weird access.
Not completely mad. Excellent. That's good.
Yeah, that's probably
a benefit.
what I was trying to say.
Well, no, I mean, that's amazing because having it documented, I was going to ask you if you actually had it journaled.
Yeah, I went through a period of about 3 years where I wrote up all my dreams, and one of the details I wrote was how I felt energetically. So, usually with my out-of-body dreams, that they're another level above energetically in terms of just a normal dream, and usually they're associated with flying.
Are you sorry about interrupting. When you talk energetically, are you actually saying your skin feels kind of tingly, or it's just you're using it for description purposes?
No, it's like waking up with full body pins,
Interesting.
And really tingling. And it was the same with that experience I was sharing, that vibrational change, very intense physically. And particularly when you kind of initially experience these, the out-of-body stuff is now sort of 20, 30 years on of having experienced it regularly.
So could you say a kind of jagged feeling for out-of-body at the beginning, but tingly for precognitive? Can you find a difference in that? Because I'm interested, because if you've got that, I'm fascinated to see if Brandi or other people have got similar kind of feelings or not.
It's finer and stronger, if that makes so. Which is the same with a higher frequency. It's more waves in a shorter period of time, which is reflected.
Any color? I was going to say, is there any color shifts?
No, I do get colors in my meditation, and some it depends what I'm doing. Sometimes healing seems to be more maroon. I think I get like a more maroon color, but But it's all energy to me. And it's all about how you focus your intent. They're just basically two. If it's
Oh, definitely.
meditation, it's about being able to raise energy, and there's techniques for doing that. And then how you focus your intent, and whether it's accessing the future, or it's sending energy to be healing. That's the intent part. So you've got to kind of have enough energy to access particular things that you want to do. And when I'm talking about that, there's a real physical visualization, which I think Brandi's talked about. I get that really strongly in terms of when I'm drawing up energy from my legs up to my chakras. I'll start getting images of whirlpools or vortexes forming at those chakras, and then there's a swirling pattern to that too.
Do you think you're tapping into Kundalini at that point, with the energy from that?
Oh, look, I hear people talking about cleaning. I really don't know what.
Oh, because I was just thinking about different people who have spoken to me about energy flow. And again, the way that you're describing it sounds very much how they describe it as well. So, yeah. I mean, again, as we said, language is a very peculiar thing. Just quickly before we move too far away, Brandi, do you get any kind of skin sensations or anything that indicates to you about vibrational change for precognition or any other kind of ways of describing it to people?
I don't believe I have precognition ability. I seem to be more empath, telepath. Like, I have other abilities, but I don't feel like I've ever had a precognition dream or any precognitive abilities at all. So I don't think that's one of my strengths now. One of my strengths, though, for sure, is lucid dreaming. So if I'm in a vivid dream, I can change the dreamscape. So I can, be walking, realize I'm walking, realize I'm not in a dream. And then I can say, like, go up to the sky and fly, and then I'll be flying. And then I'm like, go down to the ground and talk to someone. And I can ask for my spirit guide to come into my dream. I can ask them a question, receive an answer. So I can definitely change the dreamscape, but it's really not anything to do with like forewarning events or like precognition at all.
Okay, that sounds good. Michael, are we okay to go on to Melissa next?
Just quickly, I believe in my experience in terms of the geometry and knowing which dimensions I'm accessing, it's like 3 dimensions above, or three core vibrational changes that you then step out of time, and then you can sort of, well, I kind of talk of it as probability vortexes. So you'll see like the main kind of capsule of the experience that's going to happen in the future, and then there might be some minor details that change, but that's kind of how I get it up. And so that's why when I'm talking about energetically and waking up from a dream like that, I know I've accessed a higher dimension. That's how I kind of rationalize it, if you can rationalize it.
Well, yeah, it seems like you're building your own kind of, for loose description, a map as well to know where you're actually off to.
Yeah, so that's where the platonic solids come in for me, because that's symbolic of, they represent the different dimensions, and I found that other people have reported the same stuff that I've experienced. So I kind of buy into the notion that there's a geometry to the dimensions, and anyway, that's. Oh, and the other one quick thing I wanted to mention too, with telepathy.
Michael, I like that. This is the last thing, and that's the constant thing that we have as we go through this.
Well, it does tie quickly with the telepathy, because I think that was the thing I learned with remote viewing, was to be able to distinguish between your own thoughts and what I call the subtle signal. But okay, I'll stop.
Okay, right. So nice to see Bitcoin Bum appear as well. And obviously we have some very new people in here who I haven't seen before. Melissa, are you still there?
I am still here, yes. Can you hear me though? Because my headphones went flat with battery.
Hear you loud and clear, which is nice. You can hear her, can't you, Brandi?
Yep, I can hear.
Okay, so 3 things that I wanted to mention. The Allan Kardec book, I've read that, the Spirit book by Allan Kardec. that's become my Bible. Like, I've read it from beginning to end, and now I use it as a question answer book.
Yes, me too. I love it.
Yeah, same. And I refer to it often. I put it away and then I pull it out. It's a great book. And there's also, I don't know if it's still on Netflix in the States, but in Australia, they had the movie Kardec, which was great. Yeah. The other thing I wanted to say too was I wanted to give Brandi some feedback. When you said that you would do a reading for me and that I would be an angel, you were pretty much spot on. I've been told that twice. I've been told that by a psychic medium who just said it straight away. And then I had someone do my numbers as well. And he said I had very important numbers, which was really interesting, and said that they were that I was an angel through my numbers, which was interesting. I don't know, like, sometimes I can be, depending on what's going on in my life, my responses wouldn't be quite angelic. So I don't know.
Just out of curiosity, Melissa, what are you going to define as an angel? What's
I don't
your
know.
own definition?
For me, I would say like a humanitarian, I guess, or someone who wants the best for humanity. And that's something that's very important to me. But yeah, when I've heard them say, "Oh, you're an angel," I thought, yeah, I don't know. For me, an angel is someone who is pure and is perfect. And I wouldn't say that I'm perfect. And like I said, there are times when, going through my different life experiences, I probably didn't respond in quite an angelic way. So, yeah, I think I do think of myself as a humanitarian, and I want the best for humanity. So yeah, I don't know. But the third thing I wanted to say too was when I think Myron was saying about being saved by a spirit guide. I had a very similar experience. I have been told before that I'm very protected. I was driving to a friend's house, and I'm pretty sure I've shared this with either Paul or the community. I was driving to a friend's house, and I kept hearing this woman say to me in Greek, "Kapyos matiakse," and she kept repeating it, and that means someone's given you the evil eye. And she kept saying it over and over again. And I was like, okay, I'll speak to my grandmother to get it removed, because my grandmother would say this prayer and she'd have this technique, which was quite spiritual, and she can remove it for you, and she can see if you do have it by doing this thing with water and oil and something else, and then she can get it removed. It's really interesting to watch, because you see how in the glass of water you can see that you do have it. And then when it's removed, you can see in the glass of water how it's removed. It's really interesting. But that particular day when I was driving, I pulled up to the side of her street right in front of the house, and I kept hearing this woman say to me, "Go in the driveway, park in the driveway." And because I hadn't been at this house that she was renting with other people before, and I thought, I can't go into that driveway because I'm pretty sure the other flatmates like parking there. And she kept pushing me, "Go and park in the driveway," kept parking the driveway. And I kept saying, I can't do. And that's how I know that it's not my thoughts. For me, if I'm having a conversation and I'm talking back to the person or I'm responding to the person, that's how I know this is not my thoughts. These are not my thoughts. This is guidance right now. I'm being communicated to. So in the end, I said, no, I'm going to stay here. And I stayed in the car because she was still working, and I got there a little early. And then as I came to get out of the car, it was a very, very narrow street. And all I did was tap it open. But then I tapped the car door open, but then this massive, big black 4-wheel drive was flying down this narrow street. She was right next to my car, and she had clipped my car door, pushed it open, and just took my door with her. And if it was a split second, that could have been my arm or my leg. So, and I just sat there in complete shock, and everything was happening in slow motion. And I just remember thinking, oh my God, I should have parked in the driveway. And even though I didn't listen, I was still saved. I was still protected. I would have either been dead or lost an arm, been very badly hurt. So yeah, I think sometimes life's written for you, so they can guide you and they can tell you not to go there. And if you don't listen, then yes, it could be fatal. But then I think also if it's not your time, you'll be protected. So yeah, that's all I had to say.
Most definitely. On that, if anyone's not familiar with Alan Kardec, the way to spell his name is Allan, and then it's Kardec, and it is still on Netflix from what I've seen. And I have put up in the actual nest there the links to Goodreads for the actual book itself. But with those things and being guided, and I come to Meyer, and obviously I know that when you've been having conversations, you don't always take notice, but you do at the end of it, even if you have a back and forth. And again, it's like Melissa talking, she has conversations with the other bits. For myself, within accidents, I've just been shown things, but I haven't realized it's something else guiding until you look back on it and see the information that's there. It's not kind of as Myron has a physical kind of avatar and Melissa has audio. Mine's kind of visual, and you don't really realize because no one ever tells you as a small child, this is what's happening to you. So it's really fascinating. I don't know if that makes sense to you or not, Brandi.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm going to bring Myron in to ask you a question because I saw he had his hand up.
Yeah. What was I going to say? As far as there's a scripture called that says, "Many are called, but few are chosen." It's a very esoteric statement, and its meaning, always was a kind of elusive, to me for many years, and I'm not so sure. I think that I think it's in Coptic, and I'm not sure that the translation is exactly right. But one of the things that I think that you're either called to do this kind of thing or you're not. And I don't think you can learn it. I don't think shamans are created. I think they're born. I was born into a normal life, and then that life was taken from me in a coma for months. And when I came out of the coma, I was a different person, and Charon was in the recovery room, and nobody else saw Charon, but I did. And Charon's been with me ever since. But I think that people who are experiencing this kind of reality are chosen for whatever reason. I don't think there's any ego in it. I just think that some people are either they experienced in the past, and this is another incarnation of the past, and or like reincarnation, or it's I don't like the word gift. It implies certain kinds of things I don't like. I just think that people ask me all the time, how do you get a spirit guide? How do you do that? How can I get one? And my answer usually is everybody has one. You have to work with it and talk to it, and it'll answer you. If you talk to it, it'll answer you. It may take time, but you'll get it either through dreams or intuitions or just feelings, and then the feelings will eventually transform into other stuff. The problem is that people just don't do the work. They're not interested in spending the time it takes to let themselves go that far. I mean, you have to go pretty deep inside of yourself to be a psychic or to be even spiritually inclined. And there are risks doing the thing, especially in the kind of world that we live in. But that wasn't really the point I was going to make. The point I was going to make was that Paul's statement that almost everybody that we've talked to has had a kind of traumatic experience that pushed them into another realm. And I was going to ask Brandi if she'd ever had a traumatic experience during her maturation when she started connecting with her higher spirit guides. In my case, it was the coma that I was in, and that's a complicated story I won't talk about. But when I came out of the coma, I was a different person. Everybody testified. I did not know who I was. I did not know who my parents were. I didn't know anything. I was like a clean slate.
Well, you had no language as well, you said.
I couldn't speak, no. And Karen was there in the room, and of course I didn't know what that was. I just thought it was another doctor or another being, even though I just didn't know what it was. Anyway, the point is that from that trauma of something happened metaphysically in that I don't have time to go into. But the fact is that Karen, came to me very, very early and said, I'm here to protect you. I'm here to take you to your next journey and your next destiny. And those are pretty heavy words to a kid. So I didn't really understand what she was talking about until later. But the idea that this is all just made up from your unconscious or your mind, I don't think that position is sustainable, for the simple reason that the results are so incredible and so powerful. And in my case, everybody has a choice to go Aleister Crowley way, darkness, or to go into light. And I think that if you have a gift like yours, Brandi, if you have a gift like that, you're obligated to. There's no question about that. The last thing I ever wanted to do was go out into the world and talk about any of this with anyone. I did not want to do that, and Karen wanted me to do that, so I did it. I'm an artist, and I didn't want to show my art, et cetera, et cetera. I think that if you accept your destiny as a medium or whatever, then you're obligated to ultimately follow that path wherever it takes you. And sometimes that can be very difficult. A lot of the times it can be absolutely heavenly. And I think that in my case, I had to face some pretty dark thing from another incarnation, not this one, but from another one. And I had to go through those things, imbibe them, and overcome them. It wasn't any kind of initiation. It was just things I had to do in order to free my heart chakra and to move to the third eye and the crown chakra. There was no other way to get there except to go through these fairly dark experiences. And then I found out that the dark experiences were really just an illusion anyway. They were all karma, and they weren't real. And since their unreality was given to me, I was no longer afraid of them. And the minute that I accepted the fact that I was no longer afraid of them, all those dark forces disappeared. Bam, just like that. And then Karen asked me, actually told me, that I had to forgive everybody and everything that had ever affected this incarnation, me. I had to forgive them all. My parents, the army, the governments, any enemies I had, anything. All of that had to be forgiven. It took me a decade to get that done. That was very hard.
So your question is really...
Let me just finish this, then I'll be
sure.
done. What that did was it just opened this light that just came in and took the place of all of this negativity. And it just disappeared. It was never really there anyway, because that's karma. And once that light took the darkness and sort of engulfed it and made it gave me the information that it was always illusion anyway, I was free of it. And I was free of the hatred against my parents who abused me. And I was everything that I'd ever been hurt by was taken away and replaced with love. There isn't any other thing to say except the fact that love is kind of the answer, to coin a phrase. And once that door is open and you go through it, you can really never go back. First of all, you wouldn't want to, but even if you could, you couldn't, because you've crossed over from the illusion of karma into this beautiful, gorgeous light of it isn't white, it's colorful, but it's just such a great encompassing thing that you realize that you're made up of it, and everything is made up of it. And the blockage of it is all ego, and the release of it is the release of ego. And it took me years to release my ego so all of that would just dissipate, so I could love my parents even though they abused me, and I could love the army that hurt me. I could love people who abused me and all kinds of stuff. And once that's gone, you never want to go back to it. You just don't want to go back to it. And I was wondering how you felt about the biggest spiritual element of all, which is forgiveness. I mean, forgiveness is mentioned hundreds of times in the Bible because forgiveness is the doorway to enlightenment. If you can't forgive, you're stuck. You're on a base and you're not going to the next base until you can forgive. I remember that in the very beginning of Genesis, when God says, I forgive you, God is an omniscient, all-knowing being. So what God does is he tells himself, I will not remember the sin of this person, because God's an omniscient being. So it should always be able to remember whatever but forgiveness that God will forget, will itself to forget, so it never remembers this thing that has happened that was negative. So a similar kind of thing on a microcosm is that you can forgive. The minute you forgive all around you, you're almost untouchable from any negative stuff, because negativity isn't going to be interested in anything that has to do with love. It's just not going to be attracted to it.
Definitely. To summarize for Brandi, yeah, your first thing is to find out whether there's any kind of trauma, then about whether if she tried not to use her gifts, would she feel there was the tug to keep doing it? And then the next one is about forgiveness. Yeah, those are the three kind of key points. Yeah,
right. So that was the question in all of that rambling.
We didn't really ramble. You did a really good explanation on the storyline. So, Brandi, did you get the three key elements, or shall I go over them one at a time after you've answered?
No, I think I've got them.
Excellent.
So the first one about trauma. So I don't want to go into much detail, but let's just say I was going down the wrong path.
Yep, you don't have to go into that, but you obviously did go through some. That's the key point, right? Okay.
Yeah, I did go through something and realized if I keep going down this path, it's only going to get worse. So I had two choices, So yeah, definitely, if you want to call that a trauma, definitely something happened that got me on my journey. And I had already known I had these abilities. So it was more, I was ignoring them. But then once that trauma happened, I was more inclined to start using them for good. And then, yeah, I totally agree. Like, if you have this ability, I almost feel like it's my responsibility to help others with it, because the more that we can create light workers, the more evolution we're going to bring to the earth and to the universal consciousness to uplift everyone.
Brandi, could you give your definition of light worker for those that aren't familiar with the term?
So a light worker for me is anyone who wants to help others. I'm helping others so that they can help others, so that path just keeps going. If Melissa is an angel, and I know she was saying that she's not perfect and, she has days that she doesn't act angelic, but she is a light worker, because if she is a humanitarian, that's going to help someone. And then from that's going to help another person. And so we're all going to bring the energy up and bring the vibration up. So
the simplest thing could be, even if someone just says hello to somebody else, that would be considered light worker. They don't have to have anything which is absolutely extraordinary. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. As long as you are, I mean, let's say someone, you're sitting in traffic and you do two things, right? You could have road rage or you could just not do anything. If you have road rage, you're now going to make that person angry, and now they might be angry toward the next person. But if you don't do anything, then that pattern's not going to happen. So it's all about that chain of events. So if you compliment someone, maybe they'll compliment the next person. Maybe that person was having a bad day and now you just, brought them up. So yeah, it's all about those, like, the pattern and chain of events that you can bring into someone's life. But I do feel like anyone can learn this. So that's something I did kind of disagree with Myron. So I feel like some people are born with these abilities and they just have them and don't even realize that other people don't have them. And then I also believe there's people who maybe didn't even have them until they were very late in life, until they were ready, like their spirit guides felt they were ready to have these abilities and to acknowledge them. And then I feel like there's people like me who I knew I had something, but then I studied it and I read books and I got a mentor. And instead of just theorizing, I actually started to do all these exercises and, meditating and doing all these things so that I actually could learn how to develop my abilities. And now that's what my program is. So I can help others, teach them how to release their ego, teach them to trust and listen to their intuition. So I do feel like it's also a teachable thing.
Well, and it's teachable, but you have to be ready or willing to do it first place. And not everybody is willing or wants to do it.
Exactly. Yeah, that I agree with you. And I always say it's like playing an instrument. So anyone, like if you own a piano and you want to learn how to play, you can, but you could own that piano and have a great talent. But if you don't have an interest, you're never going to play the piano. So yeah, just like any other thing, any other gift or ability or talent, same thing here with the psychic abilities.
That's interesting. And also the other thing I was wondering, if you decided not to use your abilities, do you think you will be pulled back into doing it again? You couldn't shut it off if you wanted to, could you?
I guess I could. I just couldn't. I just can't imagine that. It's kind of like how Myron said, like once you have it, there's no going back. I mean, your life has changed.
No, the reason why I say this is there's some of us who have gone, right, okay, we don't want to go down that pathway. But then because you've stopped doing it, circumstances, universal powers, whatever you want to call it, will, no matter what, push you into it and make you do it. And that's what I think happens with the people who, if they're not even recognizing it with a name, it's, say, their guardian angel or their directional path, whatever, they will get pushed into it and they will continuously have to do that kind of thing to evolve. And it's really fascinating, whether it's through emotional up and down or strange events in their life, they will be pushed into it. So that's why I was asking the question.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I also think some people might have an effect on someone, even though they're not even trying to use this ability, like they just have that effect on people. So people will come to me for a reading and sometimes I'll be like, you actually increase people's confidence, or you make them want to help others because of what they're seeing you do. And they just kind of look at me like, no, I'm just living my normal life. This is just how I want to live. But they don't even realize that they're affecting other people, even though they're not doing anything other than they see as just living their normal life. So they're still doing it even though they don't even realize it.
And the idea of forgiveness, it's what happens with me with my spirit guide when I was younger. I knew that I was supposed to do certain things, but then I didn't do those things. And then I did other things that weren't so moral. And I would be meeting Charon on the mountain to do some meditations, and I'd be feeling really guilty because I had done these really bad things. And I would start to confess them to Charon and say, I'm really sorry. I really, I sort of backslid and I did this and I did that. And all Charon would say to me is, we're not going to talk about that today. We have things to do. And what that told me was there was no judgment at all from my spirit guide. All that stuff was just ignored. And that's agape love. That's the definition of it. And since she loves me unconditionally, all of those things are just not relevant. What's relevant is let's keep moving on to the next thing that we have to do today. And there was no discussion about anything. That's total forgiveness. And that doctrine is very important in human psyches. Forgiveness is probably one of the most powerful parts of the human psyche, because we hold so much inside about what happens to us, and to let all that go, when that's emptied out, it's like a great chamber of gunk that you just get rid of. And then when your spirit guide teaches you by its own method, is that it doesn't even care about those things. We have things to do today, Karen would say, and we would go do them, whatever they were, and it would never be spoken about again. And unlike with my therapist, we used to talk about it a lot, but not my spirit guide. They're total forgiveness, total acceptance, always, no matter what the situation, no matter how far I fell or did whatever I did. Those things were not even worth discussing. It was always moving forward, opening new doors, new light, going down the road. As Joseph Campbell would say, you're on the pollen path. You're on the path, and as long as you're on the path and you're going forward, that's all that matters. All the rest of it is all karma anyway, and it'll all pass away.
Most definitely. I mean, how do you feel about that on the forgiveness front? Obviously, we got Michael and Melissa still up there with hands up, which we'll get round to, but you can either answer, don't feel pressurized into asking about forgiveness kind of routine, but you can give your opinion on how the abilities that you have in forgiveness interlock.
Sure. So self-forgiveness is definitely the biggest thing. Also going back to Alan Kardec's book, Spirit's book, he does talk about, when you go back to the spirit world, you're looking at like everything through a new perspective. So instead of being judged, you are forgiven, because we are human. We are going to make mistakes, and everyone makes mistakes. And so you're going to learn from that, and you are going to move on. And especially when you're on Earth, you don't want to be living in the past where you have a lot of guilt, shame, regret. And you don't want to be living in the future where you might have anxiety or fears. So it's all about living in this moment. And in this moment, you can grow. So let's grow from that instead of dwelling on, could I have done this? Should I have done this? It happened, and let's move on. So that I definitely agree with.
Well, yeah, the whole Bible is about forgiveness. I mean, Christ's sacrifice is about forgiveness. I mean, the whole Bible is about that. So it's a pretty important precept.
Definitely. Myron, is your hand indicator working or not?
Not always, no.
Okay, right, because I want to get through to Michael and then Centered Awareness, and obviously I can always come back to yourself with the hand up, which is good. Sorry, Michael, you've had your hand up for a while.
Yeah, I was just going to agree, first of all, that forgive the key thing, and as Brandi just said, the first person you've got to forgive is yourself. The other thing that we talked about earlier, which I also think is really important, is the notion of protection. And I know when I started my meditation practice, one of the first things I asked was, whether this was the right thing to be doing. And when I did that meditation, I got one word, which was palladium. And at the time I thought, well, that's silly. It's just a metal. But then I looked it up, and in the Hellenic period, the palladium was the term given to the statue of the goddess Athena. And when the palladium was standing, Troy was protected. So it was a really, it was a great kind of reassurance. And then later on, I actually found out that palladium is the only metal that has all of the platonic solids encoded in its atomic structure. Anyway, that's another aside. But also at that same time, I had a couple of other people that came up to me just randomly and say, oh, look, I had you in a dream, and in this dream I was told that, we were protected. And so it's funny how you, like, if there's anything I really trust in this world, it's synchronicity. And when I get like a whole series coming in, it's great. And with the protection thing, I've had it, it's like an energy comes for me. Like one time I used to do a lot of paragliding. I was a paragliding instructor as sort of a part-time thing. But I got tangled up in my paraglider a couple of 1,000 feet above the ground. I was basically following it down, and this energy came over me. It was like I stepped out of time, and I had all the time to fix the problems and land.
Can you describe what that energy is? Because obviously, energy is a very loose kind of term. How did it manifest itself to you?
It's like a physical. It's like being in a charged vacuum, I guess, that's got extra energy. But when you're in this kind of capsule, it's also steps out of time. It's like you're moving in a different time. All of a sudden, you've got all the time in the world to deal with what's happening, even though it's happening in seconds. It's like you've got half an hour.
So, oh yeah, there's glutamate when it floods the brain. Does that as well with kind of the reactions I've been finding with fMRIs, with those kind of things that change your perception of time. Now, again, that's the scientific point, but whether your consciousness is expanded and filling another time zone, because obviously you can't measure that, I could believe that because I've had that within accidents as well.
Yeah, so, I mean, if we want to go down that path, then the geometry of your hydrogen atom changes with different frequency, and that changes with the shapes of the platonic solid. And so if you're bringing in that energy, it's a bit like the chicken and the egg. What's coming in is being, so the energy is then affecting the chemicals or the neurotransmitters and the proteins, etc. So if you're taking it to the basic hydrogen, the electron cloud around that, the geometry or shape of that cloud starts to go into the shape of the platonic solid, and then so this is kind of how I relate anyway in terms of my dimensional is that you're bringing that in somehow to kind of make a little capsule. And I mean, I've had that's just one experience. I've had several of those, so I don't know if that's making sense at all, but there's a real feeling and geometry.
It does to me. Can I just find out from Brandi if it makes sense to her? Because I don't know if she's hearing this for the first time and how much she knows about neuroscience, etc.
Nope, nothing.
But does it make sense?
It does.
What he's describing, right? Okay, because I thought you were answering question 1, but you're answering question 2 first. So I just want to make sure we're in the right sequence. So it's an amazing kind of thing that happens. Have you ever been in any kind of accident where you suddenly seen time slow down or speed up for yourself, Brandi?
I don't think I've ever experienced anything like that either.
Okay, because then you can probably make the connection with what Michael's saying. Because Michael comes from a neuroscience kind of angle because he's had the experience and written papers on these things. So if you've never looked him up, that's where this comes from.
Okay, gotcha. Thanks.
Just another interesting one in the neuroscience area. There was I was reading up on one of the early neurosurgeons, Wilder Penfield, and he was one of the first to do electric stimulation of parts of the brain to find out, what they were doing. And he found that with the area of the angular gyrus, when you stimulated that electrically, people were triggering spontaneous out-of-body. Anyway, we're getting on it there.
But he also did it with memory and putting it in. So obviously, Brandi, this person had the back of their head off while still conscious, not anesthetized. And when they put the actual probe in, and again, I think this is the same experiments we're talking about, Michael, tell me if I'm incorrect. This woman was going through a conversation going, I'm in this room, I'm listening to the person talking over the fence. Then obviously they've mapped out the areas where numbers on the top of the brain was there. They took out the probe, they distracted her with another part of a conversation, put it somewhere else, stimulated that, and then took that out, but then put it back into the same spot where the conversation was. And it wasn't a replay of the conversation, it was at the point it left. Yeah, that's the same one, isn't it, Michael?
Yeah, I mean, he had a stack of cases, but that the one with the memory, I think.
Yeah, but I mean, it's bananas because it's not like hitting replay and going from the same point. It actually started off at the point they left the conversation. So that's crazy how we connect with whatever source is and where memory is located.
Yeah, I mean, I entertain. I mean, memory's quite complicated. There's quite different types of memory, from long-term memory to short-term memory to motor memory, all that sort of stuff. So it all gets quite tricky. But I also entertain that long-term memory may even be accessed from outside your body. So in fact, what you're triggering is the antenna.
Yeah, the connection to it, that you're getting the signal back again. Yeah, which is fascinating. Can I move on to Melissa now, Michael?
Absolutely.
I thought you were going to say no at that point. I was just because I know Michael a lot, and other people know that I know Michael. Sometimes the comedy seems to just spontaneously happen. Right, Melissa?
I'm going to go back a little bit when we were talking about people that are either born with it or they're not. For me, I totally believe that everybody has the capability to tune into this frequency. And I think the reason why some people are born with having a stronger connection to this kind of a frequency or this kind of work is because in a past life, they've evolved to a certain level of consciousness that they can be born into this life and have that ability. Like, I feel like they're picking up from where they've left off. So in a past life, they were working with it, they were able to tap into the frequency and evolve to a certain level of consciousness and then be born into this life already having that ability. Because in the Spirit's book by Allan Kardec, they do talk about bringing gifts from a past life. So yeah, that was pretty much my definition of just trying to break it down.
And Brandi, do you think she's done well?
Yeah, I love that, because that means that I'll get even further next life. So yes, hopefully that's right.
Excellent. When we've done Myron's question, I want to allow people to understand how you work with others in an overview. How much time have you got now left, etc., so that we can fit questions in and make sure that we cover topics that we want to do?
Sure, I have about 50.
Okay, right. So, Myron, short and sweet. We'll get into that, and then Brandi can explain. Now, with this roundtable bit, I'm not sure if you've done ones like this before. Have you, Brandi?
No.
Or not? All right. Still enjoying? Just testing the waters with you.
Yes.
You haven't run away, which is always good. That's always a bonus. Right. Myron?
Yeah, just to clarify something, I didn't mean that everybody this isn't available to everybody. It is available to everybody. But I'm here to tell you that people have a free will, and a lot of people are not interested. I had 400 or 500 people work for me, and out of that group, there were a very small percentage of them that had any interest in spirituality at all. It was all golf, and sports, and making money, and all the rest of it. So I wasn't saying that that some people are. It's not available. It is available to everyone, but not everybody in this particular incarnation are interested. That's what I was trying to say.
Yeah, I got that. I totally understand. I definitely.
Excellent. So if you can summarize how you would take someone who might be thinking they're going through strange things, which are imaginary to them at the time, how would you bring them through to recognizing what they have further? Because that's obviously your basis of what you decided to do now from your own life experiences.
Yeah, absolutely. So, my program is called Jumpstart Your Psychic Abilities, and I really want to be a mentor for someone who is seeing things or hearing things or know they're experiencing things, but they just don't know who to talk to or where to go. So, because there is no you can read books all day long, but if you're not experiencing it and trying out these exercises to work that brain muscle that's going on in your brain that you've never used before, you can read about it all day, but you're never going to actually be able to experience it. So I start with a discovery call. I make sure that they are experiencing it, making sure they're a good fit for the program. Because like Myron was saying too, once you get into this, there's no going back. So it's definitely a commitment. You need to have time, dedication, patience with yourself. So, I want to make sure it's a good fit for someone that they do want to change their lives in terms of opening this door.
Sorry, just with that, you also have to prime them that it's never going to be the same again.
Yes.
For when they do this, and you must take on the responsibility that if you're going to go through that, it's not going to be all rose-tinted glasses, because you're going to have to learn how to do things first, aren't you?
Yeah, absolutely. I give them a ton of homework, a ton of exercises. So my program's one-on-one, but I only meet with them every other week, but they have tons of exercises and homework to do, and they can always reach out to me because the whole point is not to be stuck. But it's really just going to accelerate their learning because, you know, I know it took me years to find a mentor. And so once I found the mentor, my abilities just like went crazy. But until I found that starting point, you know, so I do want to accelerate it for people so that they have a starting point and then their abilities can thrive. But I go through all of that. So I go through like grounding and centering. I go through all the chakras, the auras. And then we do exercises on everything. I teach them how to release their ego, how to listen to, trust, and act on their intuition, how to raise their vibration, how to cleanse and protect their energy, restore their energy if they feel depleted. There's so much more I go through, but really everything I've learned through so many years, I'm in every book I've ever read and through my own mentorship, I'm putting this all into a 90-day program so that they don't have to read the 50 books that I read and they don't have to experiment with the Ouija board and all of that. So it's really just like, this is your starting point. I don't know when you'll be able to connect with spirit, but at least you're on the right path and you will get there if that's what you want.
Definitely, because the way that you've been talking, again, matches so much more. So, for example, Myron, Ian, and also Melissa and a few others in here that, like Greybeard and Marrow, they've all been reading books and then they've all realized at a certain key point, you just got to go out and do the work. It doesn't matter how much more you read, you need to flex it and do it and commit to it in doing so. And that's where you're basically a servant to others to help them. At the end of the day, has been the realization from everybody's life point that at some point you're going to realize it's not here for materialism or anything else. It's whatever you've learned through your life can either help somebody next to just ease either one very small bit or ease a massive kind of situation for them. And I think that's what you're saying as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And also, you know, you feel so alone when you're going through this because you might see a spirit or you might hear something that's not your voice in your head. And so you're really thinking like, and I hate to use the word crazy, but some of my clients use that word. And it's, you know, I just want them to know they are not alone and that I'm there with them every step of the way. So my website is brandyvan.com. They can go on there if they want. And actually, if you sign up for my newsletter, I'm going to give everyone a free ebook for listening to the podcast today. So they're welcome to do that as well.
I think that's a bonus to give people a step into it. Even if people don't go fully into your way of doing it, they know who you are. And if they ever meet anybody else that needs that kind of information, they know where to point them, which is the best thing. And if you're happy to come back and talk about these things in the future, because as I said to many people along these ways, it's all a marathon about exploration and finding out and community and seeing where things go.
Yeah, absolutely. I would love to come back. Thank you so much. And I really appreciate you having me today.
Well, we really appreciate you being here and the fact that you're hopefully in a new environment which you like, because I know previously you've been doing podcasts which are not rigid, but they're very similar formats.
Yeah, they're but this one's so interactive. Everyone was able to like chip in and tell stories. So I really like that aspect of it. Before I felt like I was just like talking to the audience and then like I don't know if they're liking it or not. So at least this was very interactive.
Oh, definitely. The way that we found this works so well is that, yes, you can be here in the present and actually get involved with it. And again, as I said before, this is going out on YouTube and it will be there. Hopefully it's recorded correctly. And then later on, when I got real time, I'll go through and edit out kind of pauses and other bits and pieces and make it an audio version and put it straight up into our podcast. But it's just the fact of coming around like-minded individuals who are looking at thoughtful discussions and just going through it. I mean, Ian, you've got that kind of feeling, haven't you?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, that's pretty much what it is. Just really healthy discussions around topics that generally you don't get to discuss with other people all the time. So yeah, thank you, Brandi. Tonight's been really good. It'd be lovely if you could come back. I'd really like to hear more. It's completely out of my league. But yeah, it's been a superb conversation between you guys tonight. So yeah, that's what it's all about, right?
Great. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
And Melissa, you found obviously connection points throughout your existence and what Brandi's been saying.
Absolutely. It resonated with me, everything Brandi was saying. And I was really looking forward to today. And I was grateful that I got to stay throughout the whole session this time as well, which was a bonus for me. As you know, sometimes I have to leave early, but I really enjoyed today. And Brandi, it was lovely meeting you. And if you could come back on and do another one of these sessions, it would be fantastic, because I think I'm sure, you know, more and more people would be interested.
Great. Thank you. It was so nice meeting you too.
And I appreciate the 4 a.m. people, and they got their own little club over there, down there, and the people that are obviously up late over there in Russia as well. We appreciate that. And yeah, I have to say, and again, Myron, you can connect and you can obviously validate the information that you've been hearing as well from Brandi, as many other people who will feel there's a resonance within inside themselves.
Yeah, I think I've found, I mean, what Brandi talks about, you know, I've sort of lived, and it's nice. What's really nice is that programs like this make it possible for us that sort of follow our own path and don't interact too much with outsiders. Find out that, hey, you're not alone. And knowing that you're not alone and that you're not the only one and you're not nuts, that, you know, it's really refreshing to hear everybody's input, because that way you know that you're not alone, you know. And you know, there's an old expression, you know, I read to know that I'm not alone. And I think that in a way, listening to others' experiences keeps you from feeling that you're alone, and that you're, you know, even though you have your spirit guides and all the rest of it, you can get into your own little world. And it's really nice, Brandi, to hear all the things that you said today and your experiences and what you do for your clients or associates or however you call them. And just like I do, and how others do. I mean, I just thank you for your honesty and your courage to make the kinds of statements that you've made today. And that your life is for a very, very important purpose, a purpose that's fading fast in a lot of cultures, a lot of atheists and a lot of secular humanists, and a lot of stuff going on in this new 21st century. And I think as long as we that are involved in this other dimension or other dimensions, it's nice to know that we're not alone, and that we do have common people in our experience base, so we can talk to them and reach out to them, and like this podcast right here. I mean, you know, before podcasts, you know, sure, I read books like everybody does. I got thousands of books. Those are just books, you know, but to actually talk to people who have these experiences and to listen to what happens to them, it just really encourages me, you know, that it's all good. It's all good. And it's going to get better for the rest of them. Not so much us, but for the rest of them. You know, I mean, that's kind of my job, is to go out and help others when they're called to come to me. And same for you, you know, and I just really congratulate you on your efforts and your courage, because it takes a lot of courage nowadays to come out about all of this stuff, even on podcasts and all that. But anyway, so I thank you for coming, and I hope you come again and give us more information and more of your experiences. I was really, really, really excited about it. So thanks again.
Thank you so much. So you made me emotional there, but thank you.
Oh,
Don't
you're
worry.
more than welcome.
We've been that way a lot of times with all the people that we talk to, which is fantastic, because it really just gets in there and you understand more. And as Ian was saying, people's social circles don't really want to speak about these topics too much, but there's those out there who want to dip their toes into the water, and hopefully we're providing a little kind of one area that people can come and dip their toes, get information, and they can either go away and forget it entirely, or maybe in a few months, once they've gone through the kind of cycle in their own head of beating themselves up about it, they come and listen a bit more. Then they branch out and find either people who've been talking or listening or got connections within either the podcast, social media areas, and they'll find out more about themselves and somebody else and help somebody else down that line. And it's phenomenal when that happens.
Yeah, and absolutely. And the reason that you would do it, I mean, to find your abilities, to be able to connect with your spirit guide, it's all for the best for yourself, your highest good, the highest good of others. So I feel like, if you know that and you trust in it and you have faith in it, then, why not take that leap is how I look at it.
Oh, most definitely. We're going to take the last question from Michael before Brandi, because I know you're almost close to time, yeah, aren't you?
Yes, a few more minutes.
Okay, Michael, a few more minutes.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to jump in and thank Brandi too for sharing her experience. And I know in this that a lot of us are guided to share our. I know that in my own case, I kept very much a lot of this to myself for a long time, except for maybe a few trusted friends. But I think it is really critical to inspire people, to get them to entertain their potential. I do believe that everyone has the possibility. With my science hat on, it's all about signal to noise, and we just try and encourage people to tap into the signal and turn the volume down on the noise, and I think these spaces are fantastic. It's something I've started doing probably in the last 18 months, and it's been great to connect with people like Myron and Paul and Melissa and now Brandi, Ian, who's been surprisingly quiet tonight, or this morning. But yeah, lovely group, and again, thanks Paul too for providing the space for us to engage.
Oh, no problem. I mean, it's just amazing, as I say, everyone giving their time, coming and sparing their time from all over the world and get involved in these things. And again, everyone's got such different background and experiences that it just merges really well in this fantastic Venn diagram. And again, Ian has been quiet, but he is a vocal individual, as we know he is, which is good. I just feel that Michael was just a little bit picking on him there. Ian, do you want to retaliate or not? Are you quite happy? No.
I'm happy, dude. Yeah, fair
Okay.
play, man. Sometimes it's good to keep your mouth shut, innit?
I try that a lot and it gets very difficult. But also, Michael, as you are a dowsing individual, and you might have heard, and those new people, I'm trying to set up a group of people to just tap into the dowsing pendulum kind of experiment, I think I'm going to call it. And if you want to get involved in that, obviously get onto the perceptionstoday.com website and get onto the contact form, or just email us at perceptions.today@gmail.com if you want to be part of it. And we're going to go and have people who are complete novices that want to try and do this, to people who have got experience and they'll be able to help us out, and we go from like the pendulum bit. So it's a bit like in the idea of what Brandi's doing with helping other people. It's just showing them that it's there and it's capable, and whether it's better with a group and gets more power to do it and easy, or whether on your own you can do it. And those kind of things really help you kind of understand that there's more to the world. And again, over here in the UK, Thames Water, if they ever have kind of pipe cracks, they are actually using dowsing people, which is quite amazing. So if you want to be part of that experiment, Ian, you're on for board. Sorry, go on then, Michael.
Yeah, no, sorry, I'd love to. I mean, I'm very envious of people in the UK, because all those Neolithic sites, mark out the ley lines. One little tip I would give is that there is a huge difference in the lunar cycles. Those ley lines are a lot more powerful on a full moon or around a full moon than outside that part of the lunar cycle. And if you're in the UK, Avebury is just such a special place for that. And particularly, well, you're going into summer now. In the winter, it's great because there's not nearly as many people. But I believe most people could too. It's just a question of getting out there and doing it.
I think it's just a nice step in, and I didn't realise about the lunar bit, so that's good. I mean, Ian, you're on board for this as well, aren't you?
Yeah, I'd be up for that. Yeah, totally.
So I know there's a few others in the room that are there, and then I'm just going to build a list, and then from July onwards we'll do that and kind of have normal conversations and talks, and just have the experimental group that are doing experimental things, which will be fantastic. So once again, thank you very much, Brandi, because your time is almost up, but you can come back, and we all would like you to do that. And hopefully you've had a wonderful time. If not, you can still tell us you haven't had a wonderful time. We won't hold it against you.
I had an absolutely wonderful time. Thank you so much for having me. So nice to speak with everybody.
And hopefully you'll have complete access to the YouTube video of it which is obviously an audio version. But as I said, I'll edit later, many months later, and get it all together and make it into one, and then give you links to that.
Great. Thank you.
And anybody else want anything to say to Brandi before I kick her out the door? Oh, it's gone quiet. I think there's lots of waving and emoticons, which is nice, which is good. Lots of people saying things and doing that. And Greybeard's here. Haven't seen him for a while tomorrow, which is good.
Just wanted to say to Brandi, we look forward to having her back on.
Oh, thank you. Appreciate it.
With open arms. Sorry. It's just there's a load of emoticons going on and people are not going to understand why I'm laughing. Nothing to do with Brandi. Anyway, the good thing is you got a sense of humor, Brandi, and it's nice to have people with sense of humor within our groups of conversations.
Yeah, okay, good, because I definitely have that.
Well, we look forward to seeing it again, and we can definitely kick you out the door now if you want. And then I'll give you links to other things.
All right. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a good evening or day
And
or
yourself.
wherever you are. Have a good whatever.
Right. Speak to you soon.
All right. Thanks.
Thank you,
Bye.
Brandi. Take
Bye.
care.
Thank
Bye.
you too. Bye.
So we have another one on board for our community, which is great. And obviously on the 25th, we're going to be using the Twitter space to talk to Andrea, and that will be about Taoism and consciousness. Then on the 11th of July, for those people who haven't heard yet, we got Joshua Cutchin, who will be coming to talk to us about consciousness and souls. And we're going to be using the Callin, which is CALLIN.com platform, because he would like to try that out. And I'm going to do an experiment with him for audio recording, and we'll see how that works. That means we have video. Means if you don't have a smartphone, you can actually get in via the actual browser. And if you do have a smartphone, you can actually download the app. And because I'm telling you in advance, you got time to get out there, play around with it, see our account there, check out where it is on the calendar for other people. And we can do those kind of things, but I will start promoting that heavily. We also have, as I said, we're going to have Michael and also Myron and Laird Scranton talking about the connection between geometry and water, meditation, and a few other aspects, which will be a first surface glance of the topic. And then obviously it's going to get a bit deeper, but that's going to be in the future between July onwards. We're making a framework for that. And I think Myron and Michael, you're quite excited for that. I know Laird said he was excited for doing that when he's feeling better. Michael's just on 100% there. It's not the fact he's not answering for those people who are listening later on these things. And Myron, I think, is on board. Aren't you? Ian, do an impression of Myron saying yes, because he's just run away, I think.
Myron's probably, I don't know. Yeah, Myron's probably going to be down for that. Dude, I can't. I'm thinking like, he's all right, isn't he? You all right, Myron?
I think so. He might just be away from the microphone.
Okay.
I hope so, because
it's always good to keep an eye on it.
Yeah. And also nice to see, is that you having coughs, Ian? You okay?
Sorry, man. Yeah, that was me.
That's okay. I just had my icons up off the screen and I just wanted to make sure that you were fine. Also nice to see new people. Greybeard, I haven't had the opportunity to speak to you for a while. Just send you a quick invite. If you can't speak, thumbs down, obviously, with the emoticon. Astral, nice to see you. And Tamara, I'd like to get some kind of feedback on what you thought about our conversation today. So I'm picking up people for that, if you want. So that's good from Greybeard. Greybeard, can you actually speak or not? If you put the emoticon thumbs down, then I know I won't keep asking you. Or you can pick up the invite to speak. Tamar, how are you doing?
Oh, can you hear me?
I can hear you now.
Oh, good. Yeah, it's weird. Like there's a transition and gap in sound, like when you did the mic thing.
Oh, by the way, I got kicked out of the reason I wasn't responding is I got kicked out.
I figure it's
that's interesting. That was interesting because you looked like you were here.
Yeah, but I wasn't.
Now, that's impressive, and I want to know that trick. So we get that down as another one.
That's kind of my life. That's really my biography.
Oh, definitely. Just got messages from Dead Inside and saying it's a great guest and also a fantastic talk tonight, which is great and nice for you to be here as well. And again, there's a lot of people who have been really promoting our podcast and conversations to lots of different people. I appreciate that because the people they've been talking to, they've actually been starting to come to me off their own back. And that is just fantastic. And I'm trying to schedule lots a bit where we got crossovers between musicians as well as other scientists and researchers. And it's just phenomenal what's coming up. Greybeard, how are you doing?
Hey, Paul. Nice to see you. Finally, nice to finally be able to make one of these calls.
I'm a long-time fan of yours.
I mean, equally, I'm very much a longtime fan of all of you guys. So it's nice to hear everyone's voice again. I know it's been a long while since I've been able to jump on a call, so it was really pleasant, to be able to hear people talk and hear Byron and a few other people and hear their voices, and it kind of brings me back to like a year ago, and it's a nice spot.
Oh, it's great to have you here. Ian obviously is on motorconning left, right, and centre. Do you want to say something?
Love to see you here, buddy. It is a pleasure to see you back, bro. I hope things have been well in that absence. Greybeard?
Oh, yeah, sorry. No, things have been great. Just a lot of changes for me. Prior, I had a lot of time because over here in the States, so you guys start, what is it, 7 in the evening for you guys?
Yes.
It's 2 in the afternoon here. So it's right in the middle of generally our day. But at the time, when we first started, I was homeschooling my children. So that was fine. Like if I could get started early on a call day and get everything done by 1 o'clock with the kids, then I had the whole afternoon to myself. Well, that changed. My children switched over to a public school, and now job and roles changed. So then it became very difficult, that 2 p.m. mark for me to be able to join on some of the calls. But things are getting a little bit more relaxed now. So now I have a little bit more freedom with my time. So I'm happy to be able to. This is perfect timing for Paul to be able to start this back up, because it's actually perfect timing for me to be able to jump on some of these as well. So I'm kind of excited to move forward, especially with Joshua Cutchin.
Excellent. Also, you can answer this honestly, and I won't put any black marks against your name. When you haven't been here, have you actually been listening to any other podcasts that have been being put up from the time back?
Actually, no, I haven't listened to, not just so there's no defensiveness here, no podcast. Absolutely none. Like very little videos, interviews, podcasts. I just haven't had time to sit down and listen to things like I used to be able to. Evening, just I got a lot of stuff going on in the evening. A lot of different things. Almost every night has something going on for me at this point. So it was not nearly as easy as it used to be able to sit down and listen to like a 2-hour interview or podcast. So I've had to put a stop on a lot of that. And equally with my books, I had this stack of books that I need to read that I keep adding to.
Yeah, I know. We've all got that issue. And by the way, Melissa and Ian, could you get the Christmas list and just find Greybeard's name, could you?
No.
I'll get the Christmas list and find his name.
I mean,
problem, Greybeard. I keep buying books and I haven't got a chance to read them. I just keep adding to that book pile.
Oh yeah, no, those fails too, man. Gosh.
And Tamara, have you been listening? I know that obviously there have been circumstances with yourself. I'm just quite fascinated to see that people who are actually there in the conversation, and then we've gone back, put the edited podcast up, whether they found more content to it. Because obviously when I edit, it's like 3 times. I'm here in the environment, I then edit, and then I put it together, listen to it again, and then I put it up. And if I find there's anything which I think is not beneficial, obviously I would take it out. But with everything we seem to discuss, you can't edit these conversations down to just an hour. There's no way of doing it, because there is so much valuable that I feel, and I think the community feels, is just necessary to be heard.
I also think that when you when you put the whole more or less the whole broadcast on like YouTube, a lot of things you just miss things when you're listening live, because your mind wanders and you're thinking about what you're going to say, and then you listen to them, and then when you listen to it on a tape, you're concentrating more on it, and then you actually get stuff that you would miss, that you wouldn't remember that was said. And that's happened quite a few times, and that's why I like those posts, because I listen to them again and again and again. And each time, it's kind of like reading a good book. The first time you read it, well, okay. And then you read it another time and you realize all the stuff that you didn't get the first time.
And definitely because of the time gap, you've also learned something in between through other people. And then when you've heard it again, because you've missed that point, you go, well, actually, no, it makes more sense now, because I've come across somebody else who's been able to feed something into that knowledge pool, or feelings, or just interpretation, which I found is just phenomenal.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, since this is an international group, I mean, when you think about what's going on in the world, how crazy, even in Australia, how crazy, it's really crazy. And to find to find a group of people that's international that has a common interest. Otherwise, they wouldn't even be here.
Almost definitely.
And that's really refreshing. And I mean, I have a lot of friends, but most of them are not interested in this subject. They're only interested in my art, but they're not interested in this subject. To them, it's all science, zeros and ones, and AI. And that's all they care about. They don't care about any of this other stuff we talked about today.
Oh, definitely. I found so many people that they either get an internal backlash from themselves for trying to think there's something else compared to the normal run of the day 9 to 5 existence of the world, that they go through, not, what should we say, it's almost like a flagellation until they suddenly realize they can stop whipping themselves and then kind of go, there is something different. And yes, I can accept it. I won't be judged. There's other people that will actually go, no, I've seen something similar. It may not be exactly the same, but we're not looking to pull the wool over the eyes of anybody, but we're just going, no, these are the experiences. There is more to what's going on in the world.
And, Tyson was talking about the other night. No, not it was Dawkins, I think, who was talking the other night about the fact that the world is 27 or 30% atheist, and that means that all of the things we talked about today are not even going to be included in anything they discuss, because they would consider this just fantasy. Because if they don't think there's a God, they certainly don't think that there's any kind of metaphysical thing going on. So it's all about, provable science, which I just love the fact that the Big Bang thing has been debunked, and string theory has been debunked. And so all of the certainty of truth, even Darwin, who's been debunked, all of the certainty of truth has just been wiped out over the last 4 or 5 years. And all these people talk with such authority about how everything they know this is true, that there was a Big Bang and blah 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 blah, and then somebody just finds other universes that are connected to this Big Bang, that are connected to that one, that are connected to that one. I just love it. I just love it when that happens, because it shows that we really don't know.
Yeah, we have to be true to us. True. We have to be true to ourselves, that we realize that what we know now can change and other things can turn up. Right. So here we go. Centered awareness, then Michael, and then we got less than 10 minutes, I think, from there on in.
This is to Michael. Do you know what's going on in Australia? Because I have no idea. Because when Myron said it's a crazy place at the moment, honestly, I have not watched the news for, say, close to 20 years. Because
good for you.
One, it's all negative, and I just don't like that feeling, of feeling down and out, and everything is so sad. Like I believe that they tend to focus only on the negative, and half the time I don't even know if what they're saying is true. So I just want to. So I don't. Yeah, I don't really pay attention to what's going on. I try to live in a higher vibration and create the world I want to live in. So, Michael, do you know what's going on in Australia? Because I'd love to know. I know we live in a crazy world, but I want to know what's going on in this crazy country.
Could you sum it up in 10 seconds or less, please? Thank you, Michael.
Well, it's going on in the United States as well. So.
Oh, I know what's going on in the United States. I tend to follow what's going on in the States more than what's going on in Australia, only because I believe the US goes down, then the world goes down. So, yeah, that's just...
We're not a ship. We're not in an ocean. We're in this kind of spaceship.
I'm aware of that, but see, I'm also aware of what's happened with Russia signing up with China and Iran and Saudi Arabia. Like, I'm aware of that too. So I'm curious on how that's going to impact the world.
It's all this woke stuff as well.
Hang on, let's just keep gently onto our own kind of subjects before we go off onto 15 to 2 hours off into another direction.
Yeah, you're right. We'll stay off this.
I will just quickly say to Melissa, I'm the same as you. I don't watch, and the only reason I do watch is to confirm how much they're lying about things.
What an uplifting, non-pessimistic view you have of the universe, Michael.
Actually, I don't watch the news at all. Nothing.
But in my own little to say, one of the great things for me is being involved with an academic group that are interested in consciousness and more so kind of, from a scientific.
Can we join that one?
No, it's for all the postgrads. So there's just a recently retired professor from Oxford, and he was the Wild Professor for mental philosophy. What's the Wild Professor for mental philosophy? And he specialised in delusions. And he once said to me, Michael, there's not many people that think like you, but that's a good thing because we haven't got it. And when he said that, I thought, I'm in the right group.
Excellent.
There are people with an open mind in the science.
Oh, really? What a shock.
If you could bring that name for me or some of the information from him, that'd be good. I'd like to look his kind of pedigree up. That'd be good.
So what was he saying? Was he saying that you're delusional? Is that what he's saying?
Michael called Nelly Negative, who watches the news just to see how bad it really is. Sitting there, rubbing his hands that the world is burning and just falling apart. Excellent. But I like to live on a higher vibration, he says. Yeah, right.
Well, it was funny because his wife is my supervisor. She's an associate professor of things in unilateral neglect, and so that is when you kind of fail to attend to the left side of space and left side of object. Anyway, that's more technical stuff. But anyway, Martin said to me, Michael, you should start your PhD thesis with, writing up one of your out-of-body experience. And then his wife was going, or my supervisor was going, Martin, whatever you do, just let him get it submitted first. and don't put things like that in which won't give you chance. And so
little seeds in your mind.
So in the end, I compromised him as what do you call it? The at the very end, the epilogue or etc. So because there was some great synchronicity, like the whole experiment I designed, I saw it in my out of body, but it was a real time one too. So anyway,
isn't that cheating?
No, I need all the help.
You use somebody else's information. I'm sorry to tell you.
Well, once you get to that level, we're all plagiarized, or we're actually all connected in it, and we're just sharing.
Just copying from other people. Yeah, that's the way. It's really my own work. Excellent. Anyway, I think we're very close to the end on this one. It's been such a marvelous evening, and we've got another one for May, and that'd be fantastic. And I just have to say, once again, and I'm sure I'm going to let the other people say, it's just been such a fantastic time with our regular people and new people who we haven't seen. And they've obviously stayed for long periods of time and must have been taking something away from this, which is fantastic. Co-hosts?
Yeah, I just wanted to pop in. Oh, sorry. I was just going to say, Firebird and Jackie are friends I catch up with in other spaces too, so it's nice to see them.
Definitely. And also, you're not a co-host, Michael. When I say co-hosts... I just love the respect the co-hosts have got. They've been trampled over by Michael. Oh, dear. It's a good thing that we know you. I just like the fact of the comedy. Yeah. I just like the comedy. It's just beautiful. Ian?
I thought ladies first. You're talking about respect. Listen to you.
Hey, wait a minute. Who says ladies first? Where do you get that?
No, you're in for it, Melissa.
You're in Australia. They believe in wokeism. They believe, that everybody's equal. So there's no ladies first.
I'm not woke though. I'm awake. Woke.
Yeah, but your country
There's a difference, you see. I've gone through an awakening, so I'm awake. I'm wide awake.
I understand the difference.
Yeah. What was I going to say? I just wanted to say, this is all I wanted to say, that it's always a great start to my day. We have these sessions, these spaces, I should say.
An early start.
Yeah, 4:00 this and last week, or the week before, went well.
Most respect for both of you.
For the other Australian, for Michael.
For both of you, yeah. I mean, it takes dedication and wanting to be here to be up at that time.
Absolutely. And it's so good to see Ian back as well, I have to say. We missed you for a little while there, Ian.
Yes. but I'm here now.
Were you just stomping your feet,
Any
Ian?
words?
Was that you stomping your feet?
No,
No, I think it was one of
sorry.
the dogs.
My dog said, yeah, they're running around and
I thought they were flapping their ears at that point. It sounded like Melissa gives you a compliment, and then suddenly there's the bang, 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 bang of your feet on the floor. It's just wrong timing. Oh,
No,
dear.
they're looking for that elusive piece of bacon that they think might be lying around in my bedroom, but it's not.
You have bacon in your bedroom?
I did have bacon in my bedroom, but they've eaten it.
There's a lyric for a song.
I thought it was an album title.
Probably was.
Ian's new book. Yeah.
Probably was.
Oh, good stuff.
Bacon for bedroom.
Yeah. Oh, I just love how we're very sensible on this. It's great.
This isn't being recorded, is it?
Of course it is. It's been recorded since.
Oh, God.
It's the end after chat of saying how good it is. Right. Sorry, Melissa.
I was just thinking.
Yeah, but I'm banging on Australia.
I'll edit that bit.
Yeah, take that out, for God's sake.
But it'll be in the YouTube version, because the YouTube version I can't edit for about 48 hours until it's processed.
Oh, great. So I'm going to get blasted by all the woke people.
Don't keep mentioning it.
Oh, yeah. Right.
Don't bring attention to yourself.
Well, it's kind of like having a bad sore leg. You're going to mention your sore leg. It's just the way it works.
I thought we avoided that.
On Facebook. I posted this on Facebook for my followers, right? And I'm just thinking the Australian ones will be jumping on. And we're talking about bacon in the bedroom and dogs looking for bacon. And the heading says conscious psychic abilities. And then people are going, oh, yeah, have you got bacon in your bedroom? Yeah.
Wait till they hear about the woke criticism.
No, I told you don't mention it.
Then you're going to get a lot of people calling you, especially feminists.
I jumped on and talk about dogs and bacon. And, I thought it was going to be consciousness and psychic ability.
I think you could title this "Bacon in the Bedroom."
Yeah, I think that'd be a good title for the episode. Definitely get a lot of clicks on YouTube. Yeah.
I really like the title.
All right. Anyway, Greybeard, Michael, Tamar. Has your audio come back yet, Tamar? Because you said you got dropped out.
Yeah, I got kicked out somehow.
No, your name's not Tamar, as far as I remember. Myron.
How do you know this is not tomorrow?
It's transference.
It's her name.
Yeah, I'm channeling her.
Oh no,
Tamar, would you like to be channeled today?
I don't know. Would that be Dolby or DTS?
It would definitely be a complete surround sound, I'm sure.
Yes, definitely would.
Oh boy, well,
good to have you back tomorrow as well.
Yes, it's good to be back.
I mean, this is definitely chaos.
Yeah, I believe that. You obviously enjoyed tonight's conversation because you stayed around for a while.
I did. I think I may have napped a little bit.
Just for those listening, that's a normal standard condition for her. She will nap no matter what.
No, I normally don't nap.
Semi-narcoleptic.
No, you were actually in it a lot.
Oh, with the emojis, and then they stopped working. I couldn't laugh anymore.
Yeah, mine did too. For a while there, they just didn't work. So I just went, oh, the heck with it. And then all of a sudden, they started working.
Well, compared to last week's 4 actual Twitter Space rooms, this has been a beautiful experience. A few emojis not working is just okay. We can handle that bit. And to all the new followers, yes, we do actually talk sensibly, and it's worthwhile just checking out the different content that is actually put up as audio. It has got educational and what other kind of value do you reckon it's got, Greybeard?
What was that?
Oh, superb. As I said, people can listen to the audio version, and I said it is educational. And what do you think it also is like? And you went, what was that? As if feigned ignoring of any other comment. Can I go home now? I just want to leave.
Yes, go home now. I'll say goodbye.
Honestly, though, not just that not just being educational, but it's transformative. Yeah, I'm not sure what everyone else took away, but when you first started this up, and even now I'm flabbergasted just listening to you guys and the camaraderie and the utter lack of ego in the room, with you guys talking and laughing with each other. In other spaces, this just isn't there. You know what I mean? There's just so much control, and there's so much ego, and there's so much competitiveness. And here, it's just so magical, because when you take all that away, and you just get a bunch of creatives and intuitives, and you just allow your minds to flow. And even though you guys may not just agree on everything, but you're open to other people's perceptions. And it's such a beautiful thing. And you guys have such beautiful conversations, and being able to listen in on these, for about a good year or so when you first started up, was absolutely transformative for me. It almost, I feel like I was already seeking at that point, but it was just amplified and accelerated, just given all the different minds and all the people from the different, parts of the globe, just different perspectives, and just like, encompassing all of that together in one call. Yeah, I would say it's more than just educational, Paul. It was just transformative would be a better word, I think.
Excellent. I'm just glad that it evolved into, the intention was to be there as a community and evolve and help. And it seems to have done that naturally. And the right kind of people are falling into our lap to actually do that kind of thing. And again, Melissa says so too, I'm sure.
Yeah, I was going to say I've listened to a few spaces, not just here on Twitter, but in Clubhouse, and there's a lot of talking over, being thrown out of rooms, and there's a lot of ego as well. Like, I've just sort of jumped in, and there's hundreds in the room, and I'm just sitting there listening, and I think everyone's just arguing. They're just talking over each other, and no one's really paying attention to what the other person is saying, and then they get blocked. And I think even with some spiritual rooms, like, I'll go in just to have a listen out of curiosity, and I think these people are claiming that they're spiritual, but they're not even acting, they're not behaving as spiritual people. Like, when you've reached a certain level of consciousness and you've evolved to that, you become a bit more compassionate. Well, a lot more compassionate. You become more empathetic as well. And I think none of these people are like that. They're all, I'm this and I've got that and da da da, and they're going off at other people. And I think this is so far from spiritual. You're just saying that you are because it sounds good or you want to look good. And I can, like, when I listen to people saying, oh, and I can see the soul of this and I can see your soul, and I think because I'm sensitive to energy, I can pick if they're lying. So I get if they're or authentic, and I can pick it out if they're not. And to me, it's a bit sad that people will go out there to play with other people's vulnerabilities. And I'm really proud of this room. I'm really glad that we've got this great community. We bring in some amazing speakers, and that's thanks to Paul and his research. And I love how we all get along. I truly believe that like attracts like. So if we're all going to, it can get trickier when there's a group of people, but it's good to see that the majority of people that come in to have a listen, to have a chat, to interact are good people, because we're attracting like. So it's good to see that majority of the group is on a nice vibration, a nice, healthy, healed, high vibration. We're not, some, like, if we've got women, we're in a place, we're recognizing that and we're working on that as well. We're not abusing someone else with our ego, if I'm making sense. Anyway, what I want to say in a nutshell is that I love this. I'm really proud with what we've all been able to accomplish in this. And thank you so much for Paul, for bringing this up and coming up with the idea. And I think it's been, a year now? Maybe a bit more?
Over 2021
Over.
November. Yeah, well, October we started this podcast in November. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that all these podcasts, that are run by an individual, the individual really kind of sets the stage. With Paul, he's got his rules of conduct, and how do these people talk over themselves when there's, like, for instance, we have to hold our hands up and all that kind of stuff. Do they do that, or do they just talk?
They just talk.
Oh,
there's no hands going up, and sometimes the host will have a good intent and say, well, hang on a second, this person was talking, right? So they'll do to create a bit of order, but a lot of the times, people are just talking over each other. You can see sometimes people will have hands up and then someone else will just over talk it. But yeah, sometimes they don't even. Sometimes people are just going off speaker, and then they'll go, "Who said that? Who's that?" And they'll look through the room, and then someone will dob someone in, and then that person gets kicked out of the room, and it's just childish. And I think, wow, these people have a lot of growing up to do. Jump into some of the rooms, and
I'll
it's
have to try it. I mean, I have stayed away from it, and I only listened to Anthony and to Paul. I mean, that's it. And
yeah.
and but with Anthony's just one-on-one, so that's nothing. But the group ones I've been
Hang on,
afraid to
it
get
is something. Everyone's creating something. We'll just get the context correct there, Myron.
Well, I mean,
no, some people might take it the other way around. It is something. It is a wonderful piece of environment and education and learning. This is a completely different format to Anthony's one-on-one. Yeah.
Well, yeah, but my point is, those are the only two I listen to. I haven't tried what she's talking about, which are 25, 30, 50, 100 people just tearing each other apart. I mean, that's our Congress. You know, I mean, if I wanted to do that, I can just watch CNN and get the Congress, because that's what they do.
Definitely. I have to say thank you very much to co-hosts and everybody that just want to come back and participate in what goes on, because we're not always here. We're always obviously on different social media trying to learn and do things. And again, it's the intention. Everyone seems to come with the right intention. And Ian, you've got a natural ability to kind of recognize, what should we say, deceit in voices.
Yeah, I'm sorry if I'm a little bit hard on people, but sometimes it just triggers me when, as far as I can see, and it's just my opinion, someone sat there and they're just, I think Melissa just said it explicitly, that this person is taken on a persona and they're selling you all the right products, but they're still absolutely talking shite. And it gets really hard and difficult. And sometimes, and I'll hold my hand up to this, I'll be the first person to want to just set fire and burn everything, right? Because a few people in there are just not playing the game properly. But yeah, it's a shame. But they are out there. And so long as you recognize that and you deal with it properly, then you get all the benefits and none of the stress. But it's super good to be aware of that there are people out there that are just going to lie to you. They want to have your attention. They want you to put all your faith and all your eggs in their basket, and they will say anything to you to have that happen. And we're talking about stuff that's already quite challenging, right? And to have that thrown in on top, it does make the whole thing a lot more difficult. But so long as you recognize it and you don't, let it get to you too much, things are good. And